Hello and welcome to the podcast at the card table, in which we discuss creation, practice, performance and history with the greatest minds in magic. Today's episode introduces two brand new segments to the podcast. That's the Annotated ERDNASE section, in which we analyse a video part from a guest, and you obviously understand that's probably best viewed on YouTube, but you can still get 99% of understanding of exactly what's going on, even if you're listening to the audio version. And the question deck segment, which is perfectly fine on audio anyway. I can't wait for you to hear everything that we talk about in this episode. Is absolutely phenomenal. Please do enjoy episode 6. Today's guest is one of the leading forces in sleight of hand mastery, best known for his knuckle-busting online displays of card deceptions. After stepping away from magic for several years, he made a striking return through social media, first under the handle Los Angeles and now as Chronicle, amassing over 50,000 followers. His authentic performances and powerful storytelling continue to inspire magicians all around the world. Please welcome the disgustingly talented Jeremy Griffith. I mean that in the best way. How are we doing, Jeremy? You all?
Yeah, doing all right. Thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, very well. Very, very well. Incredibly excited for this. Also slightly daunted by how much we might get sucked into the sleight of hand talk and how far this could spiral off course. But
we're about to get very wordy, like it's all like specialized vocabulary and everything.
Yeah. Obviously, as we go through this, it's going to be difficult with sleight of hand because we can't really divulge techniques with it being a public forum, but we can code it in the way that we talk. So yeah, we'll figure it out as it goes along. This might be like an episode of Penn and Teller Fool Us, where he's trying to code to the people afterwards. We're going to blast straight into this with our quickfire segment. As I mentioned, this never ends up being quickfire, but we'll see how it goes. And the first one, which I think for you might be a rather difficult question, or it might be something that you just immediately know the answer to. It is, what is your favourite sleight? This doesn't necessarily have to be cards, but I can imagine...
One-hand top palm.
Okay. Immediately?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. No questions asked.
No.
Okay.
Well, because there's one-hand top palm. The first time I learned it was from Gene Hugard, right? It's in card technique. And I thought this is the most fooling thing that I could ever learn, because there's always like a telltale sign that you're dealing with a magician if they ever grab a deck with two hands, right? That's a very magician-y thing to do. And that was always like required for me to like palm, right? And I remember the first time that I actually pulled off a one-hand top palm where it didn't swing off the deck. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a master. I've done it. I've arrived. This is it. I've done it, right? And I thought I was good. And then I met Glenn Morphew, and Glenn Morphew taught me a completely different way to do it that was stronger. And then one of my friends, Byron, rediscovered something from, I want to say it's a Marlowe thing where you can top palm more than one card. And then I sat with Eddie McCall in Blackpool, and I learned how to one-hand top palm off a small packet. And it's been one of those moves that I've been like quietly chasing, and I love it to pieces. It's great.
It's crazy how many variations and how many different things you can do with one single move. That seems so simple.
This is the thing, right? Okay, so this is a point that so there's a book I always bring up called Lasting Contribution. It is the smartest 120 pages you will ever read, and the book is like tiny. It's like that big. It's like that thick, right there. And he makes this really good point, right? It's the difference between K sectioning and R sectioning, right? The idea that when you limit the input, that is the impetus for creativity, right? That what you don't need is more ingredients. What you need is fewer ingredients and more variation, right? And so like when all you do is study, shuffling, you become one of the best shufflers because you're exploring all the variations because you're only focusing on shuffling, right? And it's this weird branching thing. So if you focus on one-hand top palm, you're like, oh, what if I do it with my ring finger? And now you're down a road for like a month. It's just... So
it's a wormhole of just constant discovery.
You're just going to be like, better not have a girlfriend. That's really where you're at.
Well, that's where mastery comes from. It's that exploration and those limitations and figuring things out.
Yeah.
So I've always steered away from palming. And
what?
Specifically,
now we can't be friends. But why would you bring that up? You asked me for an interview
sorry.
and then you lead with that? That's unbelievable. That's
I asked you if you had any questions.
That's true. You did. Yeah.
Should have been. What are you about to divulge? Specifically because I 99% of the time top cards as opposed to palm cards.
Okay.
Just because I feel I can be more free with my hands.
Because of Madison? Where'd you pick that up? Why'd you
predominantly from Madison's work.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's sort of me coming back into this more recently is where I'd picked things up from.
Okay.
Obviously, we mentioned the rounders and dealers decks have always been like a staple to both mine and your practices because they're sensational cards. But yeah, the turnover switch, which I've shown you in the past, is something I absolutely love. And copying cards, for some reason, I feel like because I normally talk with my hands, I still have the freedom to be like this and still be very angle proof, as opposed to being like, I mean, you can still be relatively free, but I never talk with my hands closed. They're always like spread and open. So it's just what works for me, I guess.
That's
which
fair.
apparently
I
is.
get it. And this is one of those things. Like, this is why people show up to Magic conventions, is because you get like the difference in preference. And you're like, oh my god, I didn't know I could do that with a cop. You know.
Yeah.
So, no, I get it. That's fair. It's okay if you want to be wrong. That's cool.
Everyone can have their opinion, even if it's incorrect.
Is fine. Yeah. You two can choose the wrong choice. That's fine. Anyway.
I will get to farming at some point. It's more a confidence thing.
If you are going to go down that road, there is a best reference.
Okay.
Hold on. I'll find it. Wait right there. Don't move. Hold on.
There was an entire book came out recently on palming, wasn't there?
Yep. That's the one I'm looking for. Can I have it up here? Oh man,
somewhere in that library.
It's somewhere in here. Yeah. So this is like my Magic library. I put it in here so that way my kids wouldn't destroy it.
You telling me that thing's not alphabetized, or?
No, God, no. No, it's by theme. It's actually by theme.
Okay.
I've got I've got the British contingent over here. I've got all the gambling up here. I've got like the gambling sleight of hand stuff up here, and then these are all thematic. But
so there is order to the chaos.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, we'll go over the best reference concerning the art of palming.
Yeah, it's just a confidence thing. Like I've dabbled with it in the past, and I've always just come back to a cop just because what I feel comfortable with.
I get it. That's fair.
We're gonna move on before you end up swinging hands at me.
Right? Yeah. You're like, he was very upset about this.
What is your favorite plot in Magic?
My favorite what?
Plot. So what is your favorite?
Plot.
It not necessarily doesn't have to be something that you personally perform. It could be something that you enjoy watching. But what is your favorite plot?
It's actually a toss up between three different ones.
Okay.
This is gonna sound funny. So Everywhere and Nowhere.
Right.
Because if you watch Babel do it, you're just gonna sit there flabbergasted. I would say Oil and Water.
Yeah.
Because if you see it done by Victor Pina, there's this thing, and if you see the process built out by Helder, like it's a completely different. Like you learn it from a philosophical standpoint of why it could either be dismissed or it could be profound, and either profound in terms of execution or profound in terms of reasoning or something like that. That really shocked me. And then Triumph, because I've seen several versions of Triumph that left me flabbergasted and not realizing that it was the Triumph plot.
Yeah. Until it gets to the very end and you're like, you got
me. Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some absolutely stunning Triumph routines. And I think Josh J had a lovely Oil and Water in his first Penguin lecture that was really, really nice. I'm not sure whose techniques he was using, but yeah, it's so nice. Every stage was just perfectly crafted.
That's the thing with him, is like he's been around forever. Like ever since he was, not but a child, and he's been collecting it from the best the entire time. So like there's no telling at this point.
Josh was writing books at like 16, if I remember correctly, which is just absurd. Like there's
Yes.
you're not allowed to be that talented at that age. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
You've got to earn
Yeah.
it. You got to put the years in.
If you are starting that early, that's like, I don't know. So this is always coming, because I've met people who like just got started and are really good. I've met people who have been doing it since they were kids and are really good. And I used to think it was time put in, and I don't think that's true. I think that it's probably like a short feedback loop on the practice. I think that's probably what it is. You know, like the way that you're practicing is more like you're constantly taking the notes. I think that's probably what it is. You know, I'm 35 years in, because I've been doing this since I was 7, and I've met 14-year-olds that could hand me my butt. It just like they could absolutely kill me with a deck of cards. And I think honestly, it's just focus.
Yeah.
Which is such a shame, because I could have learned that back at like age 10, and that would have been amazing. But
yeah, this is not something that they teach you in the magic books.
Right? They're like, oh, practice, 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 but they don't necessarily tell you like the most effective way to do it, because that stuff, like that research is very recent. And this is one of the nice parts that I think like a lot of the modern creators are doing, is they're asking hard questions about the realities of what we do, especially where it comes to things like what the audience actually sees or thinks when you're doing things, or what the most efficient way to practice might be, or something like that. Those are very, very recent like questions from a scientific, like statistical exploration standpoint.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're now asking it and publishing the results is huge. You know? So,
yeah, the book on the psychology of magic is absolutely phenomenal.
This guy, Alice.
Yes, so good.
I know. That one combined with what is it? Magic by the Numbers.
Okay.
Let's see if that'll focus. I don't know that that'll focus. It doesn't know to focus. That's okay. That one where, you know, there's a statistical analysis of what's going on with my focus there. Hold on. See if it'll do it. Of course, now it's doing
seamless.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, I've got the biggest, most beefy camera that I possibly could. And now, there we go. Perfect.
And the YouTube edit's going to get this in full.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be so good. Watching it try to guess what it should be focusing on. It's going to be good. No, but I really think the fact that that's getting published, and now there's something, and it's not that I think it's all right. It's that I think that the discussion, you know, these people are coming to the table with evidence, and now it starts a discussion, right? Yeah. Especially with like the old guard, right? Like the old guard, they're protecting the secrets, but very often they're protecting the process they got to it, right? The process they used to get to it, as well as the narrative surrounding it, as well as like the folk wisdom that surrounded it that may or may not be true, right? It might be a useful fiction, but it is still fiction. Right?
It still gives it context.
Yeah, true. So anyway, okay, sorry, plots.
Those are the discussions that I absolutely love having and very rarely have, because I still think a lot of magicians nowadays tend to be more method heavy in their thinking, which isn't always a bad thing. Obviously, method is beautiful and it can be a wonderful thing, but I think the philosophy behind why you're doing what you're doing and how you want people to feel and how you want them to react and interact is also a super important question that completely reframes magic in a different light.
That's fair. I think that's reasonable. Also, like, that's the other thing, is you could go down a road on either one. Yeah, right. True. You can go down where it's all handling, and then you'll do kind of what I did with social media, where you come out the other end, like you can do a million things, but you have no idea how to apply them. Or you can go down the road on theory, where you have these beautiful narratives and everything, but you can't execute. Right. So it's, I don't know. That's why I think is honestly the definition of a well-rounded magician is not the breadth of styles that they've adopted or tools they can utilize. It's the fact that they've gone down the road on both. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Whatever they use well, and whatever they think about it, they have thought hard on it.
Yeah, this is obviously working in a bricks and mortar magic shop and working the standard Blackpool and things like that. We often get younger people asking like, oh, do you have any advice? I'm starting out. And almost always the first piece of advice I go to is find 5 or 6 sleights that serve your purposes, whether it be a control, a shuffle, a false shuffle, a switch, and just really hone in on those 5 or 6 things. Get those really good, get them knuckled down and mastered, and you don't need to worry about everything else because they do what you need them to do.
That's fair. I think that's reasonable. Also, the fact
but
that
also
like,
explore the knuckle busting stuff too.
Right? Yeah. No. That's yeah. You get by forces unseen after you've gotten married and had children, and then you'll be fine. Because if you do it before then, you may not do the other thing. That's really that's what I'm saying.
That's where I've been going wrong. I've got by forces unseen already.
That's the problem. See, if you did that, you'd already have a house and kids, and it'd be fine. Yeah, but you, No, that was also the running joke. Over here, we've got a show called Modern Family.
Yeah.
And one of the main characters, Phil Dunphy, is a magician, right? And he has to re-audition for like the equivalent of the Magic Castle or the Magic Circle, right? And he's in the middle of it, and he's in the middle of his audition, and all these magicians are like really like hounding him, like he needs to take this seriously. And then he gets a call, and he's like in the middle of like an escape thing, and he goes, "Oh, guys, I'm sorry, I gotta take this. It's my wife, right?" And they're like, you can't stop in the middle. He's like, it's my wife. I have to take this. You guys get that right? And all of them look downcast. He's like, oh, guys, you'll find somebody. It's like, honestly, because like every magician that I've ever known, we always get married late. Like I didn't get married till I was like 35.
Yeah,
and I
there's
think
other priorities.
Yeah, right. It's because like you get so focused on this, right? And especially like with the performance stuff, especially if you really explore it, right? You're traveling, right? Yeah. Or you're doing shows and everything. And also it's a really tough pickup line to use when someone says, so what is it you do? You say, I'm into close-up magic. And they run. Right? So, I remember I did that for my wife. When we first met, I tried to show her a trick. And, by then I'd 25 years in the seat or so. And I really thought like, oh, I'm going to blow her away. And I bombed hard. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's never going to talk to me again. And this is how I know I married up. She talked to me again. So, we're fine. Anyway.
That's the trick. That's how you get it down. Next question, looking at the plethora of books behind you might be a little difficult to hone in on one. But if I was to get you to name your top 3 books, ideally with one that maybe stands out a little smidgen above the rest, what would you say your top 3 books are?
Expert Card Technique by John Hugard. Gene? I never know. That's still a debate with me. I think that one's probably the most important one that I ever read because there is so much there.
Yeah.
And you could find it at any point in your exploration, and it's got something to add to the conversation. And because it's so well filled from different points of view, and because it's, a deck of cards, it means that for effectively $25, you could start down the road on Magic, and you could go for years exploring.
Yeah, there's a whole career in that book easily.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, it's like, yeah. And then I would say probably Gambling Sleight of Hand.
Okay. Yep.
Mainly because
that makes sense.
It was the first time that this had been published in something referenceable, like in one body of work.
Yeah.
And Steve is basically the walking demigod of playing cards.
Yeah.
So, he does everything better than you and the 10 best people you know, right? So yeah, I would say that. And then let's see here. It's a really good question.
It's a difficult one when you have so many. Because I can imagine they're all favorites in their own right for different reasons.
Yeah, honestly, they don't make it on the shelf unless there's a reason for me to hang on to it, right? Because in so many ways, like you read a book and then you've read it, right?
Well, I've got to put one of them on a social media post. I can't put your entire library on there. There's not enough space, unfortunately.
That's fair. Oh, you know what? Actually, one of my other favorite magic books is not a magic book. It's a fiction book, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss.
Okay.
And the reason is because in the very beginning of that book, number one, few people write as beautifully as Patrick Rothfuss, right? There's like a joke, like if you're ever going to read The Name of the Wind, read the first 3 paragraphs. If you don't love the way that he writes, put the book down because the rest of the book is like that, right? But in that book, there is a phrase that he uses about the main character, Kvothe. And he says, and he moved with the subtle certainty that comes from knowing many things. And I love
what
that
a beautiful sentence.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So me and my buddy Elliot, we became obsessed with this phrase, and he became a tailor and a clothier, and like he makes like made to measure suits and everything. And so he made me a suit, and he put the initials of that sentence stitched into the back of the collar. Underneath the collar, all those initials are stitched. And then he made me shirts, and same thing on the collar underneath. That's what we have. And the entire book is that the only reason that people can do magic is because they have sympathy, right? There's this balance between objects and forces and everything. And so it's a very mechanical kind of like thing. So everything is understood. And that the people who are the most powerful are the people who know the true name of all things, right? And I thought that's just such a cool way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
That the reason that you can do magic is because you know the true name of things, right? You know it at its deepest core, right? That you move with the subtle certainty that comes from knowing many things. And I've been obsessed with that ever since. So like when my wife and I got married, one of the things that I introduced her to this book, and then she became obsessed with it, right? I've got like a signed copy of it somewhere over here. She took a paperback version of it, split the spine, and laid the pages on like an adhesive roller, and then turned it over. So when we walk down the aisle, we walk down the aisle on the pages of that and 2 other books that we wrote.
Way.
Yeah. So yeah, those would be my 3.
That's a pretty solid choice.
Yeah. Really.
And that is a stunning reason as well. Yeah, so meaningful. And we're going to have to check the book out now.
Yeah, it's really, okay, but do the audio. It's read by a guy named Nick Odell. And he will become, for you, I swear, he will become the main character for you. Every time you hear his voice, he'll be like, oh my gosh, it's Kvothe. Like that's, so yeah, you need to do this. Go on Audible or whatever service you use.
That is my homework for this evening.
There you go. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's such a nice way to look at it, having that sort of deep-seated respect and admiration for everything that you do is, yeah, a beautifully eloquent way to put magic. It's not just 52 pieces of paper.
Yeah, it's not haphazard, and it's not. This is and also this is the other thing that I learned from reading that book is the power of a well-spoken sentence to flourish in someone's mind.
Yeah.
Right. He wrote another book called The Narrow Road Between Desires, and in it he uses a phrase that perfectly describes my middle son. Right. My middle son is bright. He is very smart. Right. And very often that turns to cunning. Right. He's 5. I shouldn't have to worry about this, but he's 5. Right. And there's a phrase in that book, right, that he is bright as broken glass and sharp enough to hurt himself. Right. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's my son, right? My son is, because he's working that out, right? When you're young, you're still like testing boundaries and everything.
Yeah.
And so when your intelligence turns toward cunning, right, very often it backfires, and he's discovering that. And the thing that I'm glad for is that his heart is kind at its core. But the other thing is also true. He is bright as broken glass and sharp enough to hurt himself, right? And I thought, man, like being able to say that was honestly what I respected most about Ricky Jay.
Yeah.
Right? No one spoke magic like Ricky Jay. Ricky Jay had phrases that were just unforgettable, right?
Yeah.
A feat so amazing, I'm forced to mention it myself. Like no one will be able to say that and not think Ricky Jay, right?
Yeah.
Or like the way that Helder can tell a story, right? If you sit down with Steve Valentine and have him tell you the story of the Russian, that is magic. That is 100% magic, right? It doesn't matter if he's doing anything in the meantime. The way he is telling the story is effectively magic because you're there, you're in it, right? It's like when you see a play and like there are actors and they get you so caught up that if somebody dies, you weep with them.
Yeah.
But it's not real, right? None of what we're doing is real, but that fiction, you get so caught up in it that you're tied to it. Everything that's happening is happening to you and with you. I learned that from reading that book. There's a section in it where he is grieving and he is learning to play his family's instrument, but the instrument is wearing down, right? And he is, because he is alone, basically in the wilderness, the only thing he can do is learn to play what he sees around him. And so he learns to play the sound of the sunset or things like that. Like, I was like, oh my God,
that's really cool.
I can't let this go. So this is one of those things. This is also why I think that you shouldn't just read magic books, right? Some of the best inspiration does not come from magic books, right? Magic books, this is something that I also believe. Magic makes a terrible lens and makes an exceptional canvas, right? Yep. That if you look at the world through the lens of magic, you only find the common and sort of like cliche intersections, right? But if you let magic become the canvas for the things that you are and the things that inspire you and everything, those, when that happens, you know it instantly, right? Yeah. That you feel instantly. So anyway, okay, there you go. That's my 3 favorite books. There you go.
What a prolific start to the podcast. I'm excited to see where this goes from here because that was quite the segment. But it's wild. I think scripting and sort of the performative nature in that sense is quite often overlooked, I believe, in modern magic, because people think in order to relate to audiences, in order to connect, you need to be able to vibe and change with the audience and obviously relate to that, which is true. It's fair. Right. But you can still have pieces that are so eloquently put together like that, and it can still play to those audiences, but you almost invite them into your world and you transport them into this. They're immersed. They don't care about methods. They're not looking for things. They're just like eyes in. They forgot about their world. They forgot about their worries, and they're just in there. And I think words have such a wonderful way of doing that. And yeah, not enough people explore that, which would be lovely to see in the future.
That's fair. Okay, so this is something that I've been contemplating, is that you must choose your risk, right? You have what they call either intrinsic or extrinsic risk, right? Yeah. The extrinsic risk, when you don't script it. The extrinsic risk is the idea that there is input from the outside that you must manage.
Yeah.
And you must work with it, and you must meld it and shape it and guide it toward an end that you think is important, right? So like if you're doing crowd work or something like that, right? Or if you're doing like walk around magic and stuff where you are not in control, you're not in 100% control of the performance space, right? That is risky. Yeah. You watch Jason Ledany, right? You watch that guy do what he does, and I got to see him perform. Yeah. Finally, after years, he and I, we became besties back in like 2018, 2019, and I finally got to see him perform in front of a non-magician crowd, and he is unbeatable.
Yeah, guys are
like you are not going to get this, and he's keeping a comedy club totally enraptured because of the way that he does it. But that's because he takes risks. That's a risk he takes regularly.
Yeah.
When you script it, your risk is intrinsic. The risk that you're taking is that because you are taking 100% control of the experience and you are saying, this is what we're doing, you are risking that what you are doing is irrelevant to the people that you're dragging along with you, right? you're risking that the experience is not as you imagined it would be for them, right?
Yeah.
That it is for you, but because everything that you've done is intrinsic, that you weren't taking outside input on that experience, that they will not feel the same thing. And you can see this, right? If people go to magic shows, there are people who come out of it going, oh my gosh, what wonderful tricks. And then there are people who come out going, this changed me, right?
Yeah.
Like this is that risk. I think they're equal, but one has a much shorter feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing it extrinsically, when you are doing like crowd work and everything, you get immediate feedback, which allows you to pivot faster, right?
Yeah.
When you do it intrinsically, it's a large buildup. And what you have to offer is very much you, right? It is very much built on the things that you care about most, and you are offering it to the world. But because it took all of that, and because you can only show it at so much pace, the feedback loop is much slower, especially on the front end, right? So I think, honestly, you just need to pick your risk, whichever one that you're willing to do. The other thing is that if you're going to do the extrinsic one, if you're not going to script, right? If you just want to do crowd work, it means that it's much harder to take people to somewhere deep. It's much harder to take somebody to somewhere profound, right? Which is why social media, it's very difficult to take somebody to somewhere profound on social media, especially where magic is concerned. There's not enough time to build up, but there is immediate feedback. Oh, people like that, right? People will share that. So yeah, I think, and the nice part is that you don't have to pick one or the other.
Yeah,
right?
true.
You can do a bit of both, but even that does take experience. And I think you need to experience both on either end in order to get the feeling for where you best live. I think you need to do both and figure that. I'm not great when it comes to having it 100% scripted, because when I tell stories, when I teach, it's not 100% scripted, it's outlined, but I live best in the outline.
Yeah.
Right. There are people that I know, Perseus Archimedes, right? 100% script. And he works very hard at that, on saying it well, right? And then you talk about like Jason Ledany. Jason Ledany can script, and yet he is strongest in crowd work.
Yeah.
Right? When he has that dynamic, because that's what gives him the energy to perform, right? The thing that he's doing is very much scripted. The motions are scripted, but the crowd work is what gives him the energy to draw them in and everything. Perseus, it is, you're going to come with me. He grabs you by the hand and he says, you're going to come with me. And by the time he's done, you end up caring, right?
Yeah.
But they are very different styles. So I think explore both, and then you'll probably land somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be taken from the likes of the comedy world and the storytelling world on both ends of the spectrum there. That I think a lot of people could take some insight and inspiration from in each of those respects. I
think honestly, also look up slam poetry. I think that's an excellent place. Or watch an excellent lecture on a subject you know nothing about. Right?
Yeah, TED
Go
Talks,
online and look up the best lecture on astrophysics, or the best lecture on, I don't know, civil engineering, right? And you see these teachers who are teaching students who just showed up or something how to care about a subject that would normally be dismissed in your mind, right? It's 99% invisible. I think that will offer a lot of inspiration as far as what you could do, because very often people don't care about magic because they don't know to, right?
Yeah.
It's something that is, I don't know, you get a lot of people going, oh yeah, like I used to be into magic tricks when I was a kid, like that's a very common thing. But then you watch somebody pour their heart into it, something is different, right?
Yeah.
What they've done is something much more profound. How they got there, though, I really do think all of that inspiration cannot come from magic.
No,
I think the only way it gets elevated is if there is an outside influence. So go explore the outside influences, I guess.
And as the perfect way to look at that, the next part of the quickfire segment is, what is your favorite performance? Again, this opens up to magical performances, but it could also be a film or a theatre piece or something like that you've taken inspiration from, or that you just enjoy watching?
There's a lot. There's a lot there. I'm like collecting 35 years of experience on this. Let me think.
I mean, I'm more than happy to take.
I'll give you a couple common examples, and then I'll tell you one that surprised me.
Perfect.
So Ricky Jay and the 52 Assistants was the first time that I ever saw card magic presented as theater.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, I spent an entire summer, like if he ever got sick, he could call me and I could do the whole thing word for word. I'd even dress like him. Like I became obsessed with throwing cards. I could throw them into the watermelon. I could do everywhere and nowhere. I learned the patter of all of it. And I even had the same cadence as him, right? With the rising and the lowering and all of that. And I thought, okay, card magic is not something that you could just easily dismiss. Card magic could be something greater, right? I saw Helder in person, and I watched him leave a lady with one of the deepest and most profound questions that she could possibly ask herself, do I want to know? And let her hang there with it. And then at the very end of the show, I watched her wrestle with it and try to give the question back, and he wouldn't let her. And she finally accepted it. And it was like the show had ended, but it didn't end until I watched her accept the question. And that was profound to me, right? I absolutely wept with Derek Delgadio's performance in and of itself, right?
Beautiful.
First time I watched that was profound. I thought that was remarkable to watch something not just be theatrical, but be emotionally moving was, yeah. And then Ben Earl has a membership called The Family.
Yeah.
Right.
Sensational.
And I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that there is a caricature of one of the deepest parts of Ben's brain called Ian.
Yeah.
Where, I'm not kidding you, it's Ben Earl in clown makeup, speaking nihilistic profundity. And watching the way that he did that, it's like you watch somebody invest in their weird, and then the weird turns out to be profound. That was one of those moments. That was definitely one of those things where I was like, oh my God, like Ian scares the hell out of me. And also I just want to hear him talk.
The best
right?
ways.
Yeah. Right. That was probably the most surprising thing, was that I found out, okay, watching somebody invest in the weirdest part of their brain and have it come out, and I just want to know more.
Yeah.
That was, yeah. So there you go. That's my performance.
Ben's came up on every episode now in some capacity, because his ability to tell stories is just phenomenal in collaboration with his absolutely ridiculous abilities with his hands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's annoying because he's good on both ends, and that's just that's so annoying. Just for God's sake, just pick one already.
Not allowed. There's got to be a balance. There's got to be a happy medium.
I know.
And Delgadio,
I got an interview with him. Like this was like, it was I had a YouTube channel, and I was interviewing people and everything. Yeah. And then life got kids. They do throw curveballs and everything. And I needed to focus on my kids. So I've got an interview unpublished with him that went for an hour at the very beginning of when the family first started. And I promise you, I will release it at some point. I owe him at least that.
You said it now in a public forum, so it's got to happen now.
No, the one thing that I realized about Ben is that he, in so many ways, we like meet on the same level, right? Hardcore card guys, both have families, right? But I watched his ability to follow through, to execute, right? And to execute in a way that in the end became beautiful, right? Yeah. Have you ever seen like anything done by the Neat Review?
Yeah, also sensational.
Right, where everything, like you can tell the aesthetics of it is deeply personal to him, right? Alex really, really cares about the way things are presented visually, aesthetically, right? The way they feel, the way they look. Ben does the exact same thing with the education of magic.
Yeah.
So
everything to the finest detail is spoken about on the family.
Honestly, his editor is like the guy who does all of the cinematography, and we can say cinematography about what he does.
It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And I think it's yes, Ben, but honestly, the guy that he has doing that is
the Studio 52 team are
it's
a whole different beast.
They're not gonna
the cinematography, the photography that they're putting out on their socials, the content, everything is just like
just with the lighting and the multiple angles and just all right, enough with the hazing smoke and all of it.
Stop making it so pretty. Just show me the move.
Right, you're raising the bar for everyone if you could just like
where's the one static camera over a close-up pad?
No, here's what I want a 2013 cell phone camera pointed directly over your hands and nothing more. So that way everything I got going on looks that much better. Okay.
And specifically from the opposite angle as well. So it's really difficult to follow.
So it's really hard to follow. Yeah. I want like early 2011 YouTube. That's really what I'm looking for.
Ben is paving the way for magical education in a way that I didn't realize was even possible. Is stunning, and they've clearly thought through absolutely everything. And the people they get on there, man, like even underground names that not a lot of people have heard of, and then you go, where has this person been hiding? And what have they been eating and reading? Because they're just absolute monsters at what they do.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you've got gamma radiation in your cards. Like that's It's honestly, this is one of those things. But also the way that he responded with the pandemic, I think, was really important.
Yeah.
Right. The way that because he had just kicked off Studio 52, and then instead of folding it up, going, oh, the world's shut down, I think I'll do that. Right.
Yeah.
He found a way to connect us all, and I think that's sort of the uncelebrated thing that he did. I think that was something that I don't think people realize. I know that there's a lot of people with very strong opinions about Magic Online, but I watched him find a way to connect us in a time that was really dark for performance art. And he found a way to engage with all of us and everything. And I think that he really did have an effect on a lot of people sticking with it.
Yeah, 100%.
And for that, I think he's owed a lot of gratitude.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit that he doesn't get. The community aspect of Studio 52, even like the Discord is constantly popping with people asking questions, and everybody's so willing to share their time and their knowledge. And it's really, really nice to see. And there needs to be more of that in the Magic community.
Fair.
We're about to completely flip this on its head with the next question.
Okay.
Which is, what is your Magic industry gripe? What do you think is either overdone or overperformed, or just something that doesn't belong in the Magic community? In the past, we've had things like, obviously, exposing videos, egos, pirating stuff, just to give you a few examples.
So I think my gripe has a lot to do with which dogs I have in particular fights.
Yeah.
I am, oddly enough, exposure is not my beef.
Okay.
Mostly because, philosophically speaking, the only way someone learns to care about Magic is because they are exposed to it, and very often exposed to the answer, right? True. There used to be a time where the only way that you could learn Magic was by learning it yourself, by hook or by crook, and then proving that you were willing to stick with it, and then somebody would mentor you and give you access.
Yeah.
Right? But you had to find the key yourself. And very recently, we have opened up the level of information that people can now find. And that's really, really upset a lot of people who, again, I think it's because they have a professional stake in this game.
Yeah.
Right? So from that aspect, I absolutely understand. Or if you are a purveyor of these secrets, right? My biggest gripe is that anytime you go to make the argument about magic being presented or taught online, you are nearly always making that from a place of privilege. You are always making that argument from having that information. And you got it somehow, right?
Yeah.
And what you want is for people to get it the same way that you did, or at least not to get it in a way that you don't like.
Yeah.
Right? And that would be, if we made that argument about anything else, about acting, about mathematics, about scripting, about any other profession, everyone would laugh.
Yeah, it's so incredibly selfish.
Ridiculous. But because magic is based on secrecy, because you're breaking the fourth wall that way, it sounds like a very clear and consistent argument that if magic is based on secrets, you should not present those secrets in any way, shape, or form online. But we already publish them. And we already sell them. So what you're actually saying is you shouldn't publish them online because we could be making money.
Yeah, I'm okay unless it's paid for.
So what you're saying, no matter what, you are always nearly making that argument for the sake of economics. And I don't believe that's a valid argument anymore.
Yeah.
There may have been a time where that was true, right? When the only way to get things was by purchasing books or buying VHS tapes or something like that. Then it sort of made sense because the only way to get the secrets and everything was to invest thousands of dollars into the production of it.
Yep.
But if you come up with something and it takes you, not but 4 minutes to film it on your phone and you throw it up online and there's no economic trade on it, then that's not your fight.
Yeah.
In which case, I think exposure for the sake of education, I think is a remarkable gift. Because there's some girl who's like out there borrowing her mom's phone and the Wi-Fi from somewhere that isn't her house to learn how to become an exceptional card handler or something.
Yeah.
Like, I think that person deserves as much of a chance as the person who has thousands of dollars to invest in private lessons and everything. And some of that's just me with like an overdeveloped sense of justice. Like, I think that everyone deserves the chance that they are able to take advantage of. So yeah, I would say that, and I've got beef with the old guard. I've got beef with the guys who think that like you gotta earn your seat at the table by following the same road that they did. I don't believe that road is what it once was, and some of that I think is because the resources have long since passed away, and some of it is because the world just moves too fast now. So I would say those are my two things, right? The idea that you have to follow the same road that the generation before you did, and the idea that exposure ruins magic. I don't think that's true.
That's such it's a very different outlook to the way most people look at exposure, but it brings to the point the question as well. It almost opens up creativity too, because if methods are being divulged, you then have to create new methods that people don't know. And therefore, you're having to think on your feet and you're having to be creative to constantly develop this ever-exposed...
all right. So this was the argument that Valentino did when he did The Masked Magician on Fox way back in like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
His magic secrets exposed. And at the very end, I'm the Masked Magician. He takes off the mask and I'm Valentino, right? And his whole argument was I wanted to push magic forward. And this, I think, is probably a post hoc justification for trying to earn money from a major network. I don't think that this guy thought, man, magic is really stagnant. I think I'm going to expose its secrets so that it moves forward. I don't think that argument actually happens. What I do think is that by accident, magic moves forward because people who don't care about magic expose its secrets, and magic must become tougher. It must become stronger for it. And the reason why I think magic is so much stronger than its secrets is because exposure has only increased in frequency, right?
Yeah.
And the level of exposure has only increased. But also, exposure is drowned out the very next day by brain rot and the latest sensational news and everything.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing, is that we live in a world that is so filled with information that even when you expose an entire performance, say someone gets really mad at Shin and decides to expose the entirety of it, or puts the entire tutorial up online for free, right? The only way that people are going to invest in that is if they already care.
Yeah.
Right? In which case, the audience is appropriate. Right? Or
the people who would seek out that information anyway.
Yeah, and
if they're willing to
50
invest their
minutes
time.
watching the entire, like those were the people you wanted to watch that anyway, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, the economic thing, yeah, I think you can make an argument. If you're trying to expose somebody's secrets in order to, and that harms them economically, right? They make their living off of that, then yeah, obviously exposure is bad, right?
Yep.
But again, that's because the intention of the exposure is bad, either by malice or by indifference, right? Malice if you're trying to ruin somebody's career, or indifference if you don't care if it happens to ruin somebody's career, right? But if you are exposing for the sake of education and somebody watches that, because they're watching that, they are the intended audience.
Yeah.
Right? So sort of in a backwards way, you found your students by walking around and lecturing, and the people that followed you are the people you'd want to lecture to anyway.
Wow. What a prolific outlook on the whole exposed situation. That's not that's not a common answer at all. So it's nice to hear a completely different outlook, and it certainly changed the way I am gonna start thinking about it. Because it's very easy in a secretive nature that we're in to be annoyed that those secrets are being exposed. But as you say, like the amount of new people that it brings in, and the more the community grows and the more Magic develops as a whole, is probably far outweighing the amount of people that are scrolling through very quickly, seeing a method and going, yeah, that's cool, and then continuing.
Right.
They probably
and again,
don't care.
there is that fallacy that people will remember.
Yeah.
That people care about it enough to remember how it was done, and that when they are finally exposed to that one narrative, they'll go, oh, I know how that's done. I saw that tutorial 4 years ago on TikTok. That just doesn't happen. There's not enough context, right?
Yeah, people have so many more things in their life to worry about than
kids, and they got to figure out like health insurance and stuff. They don't care about like, oh, that's how this one version of the ambitious card is done. Now I know every version of the ambitious card. Like, it's not. This is the flip. This is the one argument that I will make, is that there was the idea that when you present card magic, right, that to the audience it's all one trick. Oh, it's a card trick, right?
Yeah, starting a routine and somebody going, oh, I've seen this before.
Yeah, right.
What do you mean?
Oh, this is the one with the cards, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But that can be turned on its head, right? That could actually be advantageous.
Yeah.
Because if you come at it from the other end, right, it means that it affords you the ability to be as creative as you want. Because say somebody is exposed to a secret of cards and they go, oh, I now know how the card trick is done.
Yeah.
And all they know is one version of one narrative, right? One type of story that we tell with cards. And then you do something completely different. You now blew that out of the water.
Yeah.
With one trick, you blew away an entire assumption they had about Magic because you did something different, right? They know how a double lift works, and you did card to pocket, and now they don't know anything anymore, right? This is like the black swan theory, right? That everything is based on empirical evidence, right? Everyone thought that all swans were white, and then they see a black swan, and now it completely blows away generations of assumption. This is the same thing in Magic. When they're exposed to a secret, they go, oh, now I know all of Magic, right? That would be a ridiculous assumption anywhere else, right? It's like if I told you the end of a great novel, you're like, oh, I now know the ending of every great novel. Yeah. It doesn't make sense anywhere else, right? But because there is that weird perception with card magic that it can all be condensed to a card trick, it's very easy to blow that assumption away, and then you leave them with this great experience because you were able to do that. So
there's an immeasurable amount of tricks with a deck of cards alone, never mind all of the other utilities that we have at our disposal. So There's nothing to worry about. And going back to what you just mentioned there about the Masked Magician as well, it's not like everybody sat at home was then like, I'm going to hop down to the workshop, I'm going to build the schematics for that illusion.
Where it pushes the spike through.
And I'm
they're not
now going to do that. Like, there's such a ridiculous thought. I don't think that's
there's
anything
no
that's
knowledge investment after the fact. It's all cerebral. And this is the thing that, you and I were talking about, like mastery earlier, is that asset knowledge, right? That deliberate practice that would come with it to actually know it. This is the difference between someone reading a popular book on astrophysics and someone sitting down to do the equations themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're willing to put in the effort, you deserve it.
Right. One takes 4 years and a bachelor's degree. The other one takes like a solid weekend or a plane flight between continents. Right. Like, so yeah. Anyway. All right. I'll stop making that argument. Go ahead.
The last question of this sort of quick fire round is, who are your influences? I'm going to try... I know. I'm going to try to get this down to maybe like 5 or 6, but I know for yourself that's going to be an incredibly difficult task. But if there's 5 or 6 that sort of stand out as most prolific, and then there's some people that you'd like to give credit where credit is due, then by all means, please do so.
Okay. Let me think. We are who we are because of the unseen sacrifices of those who loved us most. I will never know all the people that influenced me.
Yep.
Which is a poetic and confusing answer that is absolutely true, right? It's cliche because it's true universally. So in terms of my inspirations, I will never be able to thank all the people that actually inspired me or gave me the room to do what I need to do. I can tell you my twin and my wife and my kids, big inspirations for me, not just because they gave me the room, but also because they believed in what I was doing. So I would say definitely them. But then if we were talking about magic influences, buddy, that's going to be... That's a mean thing to have. 35 years of collecting this stuff. I can tell you, the guy that got me started was my 7th grade science teacher, Kevin PATCT. I still talk to him. Wow. And he was the one that, like, he was a Magic Castle member. And in the 7th grade, right, he had done a magic club on campus, and I joined, and then he got me my start. He sent me off to Magic Camp as a kid. He sponsored me when I tried out for the Magic Castle when I was 14, and I got in. A guy named Max Howard. He was a guy that I met at Magic Camp, and he was the first person that taught me that magic could be theatrical and profound. I still have the envelope that he gave me from way, way back when, containing all of the things, all of the booklets that he gave me at that time when I was 14 at Magic Camp. He gave me a copy of every lecture note that he had because I was so invested. And his routine is how I got into the Magic Castle. It was just a twisting the aces routine. I got into the Magic Castle doing a twisting the aces routine, and it was that good, right? So I will be forever grateful for him. David Malik was the guy who taught me that I had something to offer, right? I started doing this stuff on Instagram, and I did a Magic Jam, and then he showed up, and I knew David Malik, right? Yeah. I knew his work. And I didn't realize who he was until I watched him shuffle cards, and I was like, oh, Jesus, I know that shuffle. Because he can just shuffle, right? He will just, I'm not kidding, he does a perfect shuffle, not by farrowing, but because he can actually perfectly shuffle, right? And then the guy that he introduced me to, Ron Conley. So Ron was the head of gambling protection for a lot of the casinos in California. Knows a lot, right? Can do a lot. Right, was shown how to do this, practiced it, was a professional poker player for decades. I spent every single weekend with him for like nearly a decade, or at least he and I were meeting up for several hours at least once a week. Yeah, for like a solid decade. He was my main resource for learning a lot of like the gambling sleight of hand. He was actually Steve Forte's mentor in the gambling protection world. He was the one that gave Steve Forte his start. That's why he's always being thanked in all of Steve Forte's books. Yeah. It's because Ron sort of like helped him come up in that. And there, Steve had a lot of other influences, but Ron was one of the major ones. And then he had the same influence on me. All of the brief work that I do is because of Ron.
Yeah.
So I would say if we were talking about those, and then I constantly sit at the feet of both Helder Gameras and Ben Earl.
Yep.
And then, for obvious reasons, what they do is just brilliant.
Phenomenal in their own right.
And they are excellent at expressing and teaching it. And then the last one I would say is a guy that I never got to meet, Gabby.
Yeah.
Gabby Barreras, right? If you ever want to learn real magic, sit with the boys from Madrid and have them tell you the story of Gabby.
Yeah.
There's not a single person I've ever known that sat with Gabby and didn't walk away feeling like they didn't know anything. Like they had to start over because he found a way to do it better. So like I do like 5 routines from Gabby, and they're the most important routines that I know.
Oh, those guys in Spain are built different, man.
They are. I don't know what's in the water, but it's definitely something different than what I'm drinking. It's definitely, yeah. There's one of my favorites is the protege of Gabby, Victor Pina. Yeah. And he doesn't release a lot, right? On this side of the world, right? But when he does, he doesn't play around.
Yeah.
Victor he's one of my nearest and dearest. And it was because during lockdown, we found each other. And I had said that I really wanted to learn from Gabby. And he's like, Gabby was one of my dearest friends. He was my mentor. And I realized when I looked at one of Gabby's only like lectures, it's Victor sitting right next to him.
Makes sense.
I was like, and he showed me everything. And his style is very, very Gabby-esque, and it's very much Victor too. But he gave me that gift. He gave me the chance to sort of learn from Gabby by learning from the person that invested most in Gabby. So.
Yeah. I definitely think the sort of largest part at play with the Spanish community is that of the community. It is a family. It is a collaboration. It is just, such a beautiful community in the way that they share and explore and really just invest in each other. And that's something that I feel a lot of the rest of the world can take
a cue from, right? Like the way, 100%. The collaborative aspect of it is it is remarkable to watch, especially like go to a magic convention. This is one of the reasons why I think if you get the chance, you should do that.
Yeah.
Right. This is actually one of the gifts that I saw David Malik do. Is I ran a magic jam for like a solid 7 years, every single Monday for 7 years, and David has been in it since he was young, right? And he is pound for pound. There are probably 2 people that I know who could blind stack 7 hands with a deck of cards. David is one of them, right? And he'll send me videos of him practicing. And I was like, well, that's a lifetime. Like, I'm never going to learn that.
Yeah.
That's just. But David is also the guy who would sit with one of like the 10-year-old kids that was showing up to my jam just to walk them through how to do a better pinky count.
Yeah.
Or he would, if a kid thought that he had come up with something, and it's something that we all know, he would celebrate that. He would act as though he didn't know, to give that kid a moment of like inspiration. And again, it's a useful fiction, but it was something he knew was deeply important to that kid, and he let them have that moment. Yeah. And then he would build on top of it, and then they would eventually discover, oh, this is something that we all sort of know, but he would let them keep that moment for as long as he could.
Yeah.
And that's one of the dear things. This is why he's a friend of mine, is because I've seen that moment so very often. And to me, that is the truest part of David Malik, right? Is this guy who is an absolute beast with a deck of cards, who still I have seen so very often build up the next generation. And I love that. I love that to pieces.
It's those little things that people do, and time is the most valuable thing you can give to anyone, because it's the one thing you can never get back. Fair. And like you said, with your science teacher starting up a magic club, to him that was probably just I'll just start up a magic club, we'll see what comes about of it. And he probably doesn't realize just to the extent how much that's affected so many different people and so many journeys. Like yourself, you've amassed such a crazy community.
And what's funny is he doesn't realize how much, like, what, I'm not kidding you. He was the camp counselor for like the kids in Close Up. And, I got my start there. I have friends that got their whole start there. Yeah. A bunch of the kids that were in the Castle program when I got in were there because they followed the same route that I did with Kevin. one of the kids is an Academy Award-winning actor, like who like we learned a lot of that from the magic world and everything. A guy named Will Brill. Like all that stuff. There's no way to tell. There's just no way. And this is what I mean, right? We are who we are to a large extent because of the unseen sacrifices of those who loved us most, right? He invested in kids that knew him not, right? He invested in all of us, even though, like, there's no way we could repay him, right? There's no way for us to, like, make it up to him. And he knows that, right? He's investing in all of us and not getting anything in return except for the stories, right? But all of us can look back and say, Kevin doubled down for us, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, where I think that collaboration, I think that's the only reason why magic survives all of the craziness in the world, why it survives exposure, why it survives the ebbs and flows of interest, why it survives like the changes in media and presentation, why it survived a pandemic is because of that, right? That's that thing that we were talking about that Ben did so well, is that he gave us a home where we could all go, okay, we're all safe. I know the world is crazy. What are you working on? Right?
Yeah.
And it gave us like a quiet moment. That was the whole point of the jam. Was just a therapy session. I had just lost my dad, right? And one of my friends came and we set up this thing. We were both having a really rough go. Alec, Blanco, right? Whoever had the mat and the cards got to do the talking. The other one had to listen, right? And then people slowly started showing up, and then it became a thing, right? Every week. And then that became like my connection to the magic world, was all these guys would just show up out of nowhere and just come have dinner with me. And we would all, and then like big people would show up, right? Guys who had like shows and everything. And it turned out they wanted to do the same thing. They just wanted to like sit and collab and jam. Yeah. And it was great. That was, for me, that's what magic is that community, right? And I do think it's going to take us a while to find that again, mostly because I think social media changed, right? It moved away from like the community aspect, unless it's purpose built for that, right? Like Discord is for building communities, but Instagram moved away from that. YouTube moved away from that, right? So I think we're probably going to have to find a new medium for it, but I think we could do it. I think we could get it back.
Yeah, 100%. There's still so much scope for rebuilding that, and there's so much scope for where we can go with it as well. And I think it's definitely one thing that I know, certainly myself, now having had this conversation and sort of bringing the point to light, those little moments that you don't realize when you're spending time with people,
right?
How much they mean and how much they can affect that person. You overthink it so much. You're so like self-indulged in your own life and your own happenings and what's going on in your struggles that you sharp forget that every single person out there has their own story, has their own struggles, has their own shit going on. And adolescent, I finally learned the term for that, adolescent egocentrism, right? When you believe that you're the only main character. This is the dangerous part about that whole like simulation theory, is that you have this weird belief that like, oh, you're like a playable character, right? And everyone else is just an NPC. I think that that's honestly the greatest way to like find out that you're not the main character is have kids, is because you find out like, oh yeah, they don't care what you've done. They don't care like what you have to, they need to be fed and changed and loved and snuggled and all of that. It doesn't matter what you had planned and everything. It immediately rips you out of that. And if it doesn't rip you out of that, you're probably a shitty parent, right? Like that's, so you need to get yourself in check.
Right. But that's the other thing is when it does that, it forces you to take a look back at everything that you are and where you've been and everything. And it does give you this deep appreciation.
Yeah.
And that I think is probably the sort of like, I don't know, quiet effect of like later in life when you get married, when you have kids and everything. I think that teaches you a lot of gratitude because it forces you to acknowledge not just the effect that you're having, right, in real time, but also the effect that everything had on you and all the people, right? I got real weepy and emotional after I had kids because now I'm seeing like life in 3D, right? Now it's not just me and my story. Now it's everyone and all of our stories. And it is profound to remember how many people got me to where I was and how on the turn of on the turn of a coin, it could have gone the other direction.
Yeah.
Right. But people like doubled down for me. And not that I didn't play a part, right? Obviously I played a part, right? I invested, I did some of the work and everything, but
just a little bit.
The world is chock full of masters. And what we lack is a big enough world to appreciate all of them, right? I think that is probably, I don't know whether that's clever or true, but it feels true. So anyway, okay, there you go.
That might be.
I'm gonna keep doing that, man.
The most crazy prolific quickfire section we've ever had, but yeah, it's opened a lot of very thought-provoking topics for myself, and hopefully it will for everybody that's going to be listening to this as well, because I think there's a lot of discussions there that need to be spoken about and need to be brought to light and need to be recognized for what they are, because they deserve the respect and the admiration that everything has.
Yeah, and there are people that they would never be given a chance otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, the whenever someone ever talks about a universal principle, you need to take that at scale, right? Does that principle apply equally to, you know, a broke kid from the Bronx as it does to like a rich kid on the coast of California and like a mansion, right?
Yeah.
When they talk about, oh, this is the way to like get noticed in magic, or this is the most important principle and everything, it has to be applied across the board. And if it doesn't, it's not universal. That's what that word means, right?
Yeah.
So
it's a beautiful thing that to bring it back sort of to the magic community as a centre, Andy and Preston Nyman with the London Magic Convention, they offer a set of free tickets for anybody that's unable to afford it or is just feeling down, or for whatever reason. They have a set amount of tickets. You email, you just let them know that you're after a ticket. You don't have to give a reason. There's no questions asked. There's no like what's the word? Like singling you out. Yeah. Right. There's nothing. It's just as is. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that should be interpreted and put into everything, let alone just that magic convention. It's a great outlook to have on life.
I think that I think is the difference between a pretty words and a beautiful life.
Yeah.
Right. Watching somebody live that out in real time that's beautiful. That's exactly
saying something and doing something.
Or you know, that's like the best of us. So
yeah. Well, we're gonna take this back. The very start, you briefly touched on there how you sort of got into magic. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring to light about your origin story? I know you've mentioned it in a multitude of other different podcasts and on your YouTube channel and things like that. Right. But is there anything you'd like to bring to light that you think might interest or help educate other people in the way that you got into magic? Because you've had a very different sort of magical upbringing to a lot of people, in the sense that you took quite a long break from magic and then refound it again, and you ran with it.
Thanks.
You certainly ran with it.
I learned what I could do when I stopped trying to make it do something for me. I think that was probably the biggest thing. Was I tried doing magic professionally and I burned out very quickly.
Yeah.
And some of that is because I'm a terrible professional, but some of that I think was because I was trying to force magic to produce something for me that was completely unrelated to it. Right? Okay. Magic is art. Yeah. And the second that you try to turn art into commerce, you generate commercial art.
Yeah.
And when we say those words together, we do not think Picasso. We do not think Da Vinci. We think a sculpture sitting in the lobby of a large building.
Yeah.
Right. We think of a photo or a painting hanging up in the waiting room of a law firm. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. I think that when you make something commercial, you are creating a facsimile of what it could be in order to reach an end. And I will never look down my nose at anyone doing that, because I have seen people do it and the end is beautiful.
Yeah.
I was unable to do that. Some of that is just me, right? Some of that is just, as it turns out, doing it professionally was killing it for me. And what I was producing made it look like that was happening, right? Like it really did. You're like, wow, you got like $100 an hour for that and you look miserable the entire time. But yeah, as it turns out, I hated making money from magic because it meant that everything that I was doing came with dollar signs in my eyes.
Yeah.
Right? Will this produce for me?
And
I
had that
hated
price
that.
tag attached.
Yeah. I did not like approaching it that way. It was supposed to be something where I would find peace and I would find like whimsy. And
I think it's certainly something a lot of people find when they take their passion and turn it into their profession. Outside of magic, I coach parkour and freerunning for a living. And certainly getting into the coaching aspect of that more so than the training side of it totally flipped the hobby on its head. Like, I'd get to the end of my shift and there's no way I'd want to stay and practice and like progress and learn because I was worn out, I was tired. And it gives you a whole different light of respect for what made you so passionate about it in the first place. And you tend to lose that, which is horrible, because I think a lot of people fall out of love with their passion through trying to make it something more than it needs to be.
That's fair. There's a couple of people that I think I took a lesson from. Number one, like if you're ever going to make it commercial, you must become as fascinated with the commercial aspects of it as you are with the art.
Yep.
And there are people who can do that, right? And they are measurably, pound for pound, better than me at magic in the whole.
Yeah.
Because they can do it from all angles. I could not do it professionally. That's my bar, right? If you ever talk with anybody that ever dealt with me on like the products or the releases, they'll tell you I'm insufferable because I just wanted it to be a handshake.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be an agreement between friends because I had this deep-seated fear that it would become commercial and then I would lose the love and this would be where I started to burn out, right? Yeah. And it became like, they're like, man, I got to file like tax documents. I just need you to come up with like a proposal. I'll be like, can't we just like have a lunch and just agree what we'll do, right? So like I did a project called Ripping for Art of Magic, which was eventually acquired by Vanishing Ink. And I got done with that. And I said, hey, instead of paying me, because they were all my friends, I said, will you let me just have like a shopping spree through the Art of Play warehouse? And they did. And that's like a solid like 70 decks right there that they just let me like take. And I was happy, right? Because I have a job, right? This office is actually in a larger office that is effectively my family's software company, right? Yeah. And I just hide all my magic stuff in here. So I'm good. Like professionally speaking, I've got something that provides for it. So there's no weight on magic to do that for me. Yeah. Right. It has the capability to, and I've been able to do a lot of things, but I saw far more success when I stopped trying to be a professional, when I stopped trying to do something that I knew was killing it for me. And I could just focus on being good. And then it became that thing, right? That saying, be so good that they can't ignore you. Yeah. That's what happened, right? Is that I got to the point where it started to work. All the years finally like piled up and eventually it overflowed on social media and then it just kind of blew up from there. Yeah. And I'm a few years out from that, but I got to travel. I have friends all over the world. Like commercially speaking, it probably cost me far more than it ever made me. But that was the agreement, right? Yeah. And this is how you know, right? It's why you can tell that I love chess is because I'm bad at it and I still love it, right? You can tell that I love magic because it cost me far more than it ever made me and I still wouldn't give it up. Yeah. Right? But I had to take time away from it professionally. And that's what I mean when I stepped away, it meant that I only did card tricks for myself. Yeah. I never actually put down the cards. I just stopped doing it for people because I didn't want to get invited to parties because they knew I'd perform, right? I wanted to show up because I wanted to hang out with my friends, right? But I was still practicing. So when social media showed up, it took a little while to get these bad boys to warm up, but a lot of it came back pretty instantly because I was still doing that, right? So 35 years, I would say the bug never stopped biting. It's just for a long while, I stopped talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the practice is evidently visible in what you do.
Thanks, man.
It's absurd. obviously over time, when you came back into social media, you maintained daily uploads for I think nigh on 8 years,
Something like that. Yeah,
which
it was a lot.
is absurd. What did you learn from this process? Obviously, you amassed a very large following,
Right.
but it's not a following in the general sense of they're just numbers. The following that you created was very much a community, more so than just viewers for the sake of viewers, which I think is beautiful. And how did that come about, and what did you learn from it?
I would say that that community aspect we were talking about earlier. That was very, very present in the early days of Instagram. When I showed up, they were just allowing you to upload videos, and so we would challenge each other, right?
Where has this gone? It needs to come back. It was such a beautiful time.
Right? It's called Pass the Change was the original one, and we were just doing card changes, right? And I would challenge, Felix Bowden down in Dominican Republic. He would challenge Nick Vlau in Russia, and anyone who hung with that ended up gaining a big following because they were watching us compete with each other, right? And then it became a thing of like, the culture around Magic became very social, right? So like the 52, right, became a thing. The like rock stars started to show up, right? Ramsey was a big deal. Daniel was a big deal. Still are, right? And that aspect started to grow. And so again, anyone who was sort of even around that started to grow too. It was like all boats kind of rose. And then Magic companies realized that that was an easy way to find people to like develop products, was just look on social media, man. Like it's easy to find mastery on social media, right? Yeah, there's a lot of information, but all the masters are there, right? And so they started like finding us, and then we started to like produce things with Magic companies, which meant that people who were looking into Magic were finding the products that we were producing, and they found us through social media. And so then they would trace us through to and it all kind of rose, right? So I would say the biggest thing that I learned from all of that was, one, it's okay. Number one, it's okay to do multiple takes. No one's tracking, right? Like, just
you're telling me all of those weren't single shots?
Yeah, all of them. One take. That's all it takes. No, no. So number one, it's okay to not release it until you're comfortable with it, right? And also, you'll never be fully comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Right. Every time you see one of those compilation videos, right, where I'm doing like a bunch of things all at once. Okay. So the truth behind that is that I was comfortable with 15 seconds. When they upped it to a minute, I had a panic attack. And then somebody goes, why don't you just take 4 15-second clips and just smush them together? And I thought, so then that became a thing. But eventually you kind of run out of ways to like throw things at your crotch while seated.
Yeah.
So every time one of those videos showed up, they were practice sessions, right? Like the world was getting loud. And as it turns out, I was slow to adult, right? And so staying at the card table allowed me to sort of process the world at the pace that I could handle it. And each of those videos is literally 3-hour practice sessions of me just exploring what you could do with the deck of cards. And if I came across something interesting, I would film it and I would look at it and see if it was something that was like cool to like present. And then I would practice it, and then I would film it at 60 frames a second because I didn't have 120, and I would see, could it fool 60 frames a second? And if it could, okay, now let's film something. Now let's go for it. And then I would do that. And then I would do the same thing over and over again. And so every video was this long practice session where I would just put some music on and just jam. And then I'd splice up things that I had like come up with. That's why it got weird there for a while, where I'm like bouncing cards off the table and everything. Is because you're sitting there with a deck of cards. Like I said, there's only so many ways to laugh. Things.
Crazy, yeah. Some of my favorite videos of yours are literally you jamming along to music, and you can see you either mouthing or actually singing the words whilst doing everything.
Find a good soundtrack. Just do it to that. Yeah, that's
obviously, we're going to jump into a segment in a second called Annotated ERDNASE, in which we're going to sort of deep dive into one of those videos from Instagram. We're going to talk about what sort of the thought behind the different things that you'd put in there was. But before we get into that, on the topic of obviously these practice sessions, what in your opinion, and obviously this is totally different for every person, constitutes perfect practice? Because
there is none.
Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
I don't think there is
none.
I think that's more clever than true. I think it's something that, and it's not, I think deliberate practice makes deliberate progress.
Okay.
Right? I think that progress can be influenced. I don't think it can be perfected. I think flawless execution is probably more happenstance because the world is an open system. You have no idea what's coming at you, man. And so there are things that you cannot foresee.
Yep.
Right? So when you go to execute these things, you don't know, like it might be the air conditioning is causing your cards to lose the breather crimp, right? Something like that. So I think that the only thing that you can do is deliberately practice and pay attention to the outcome as consistently as you can. Right? Okay. That's one of Ben's big things, right? That's the lesson he's been hammering in on people. Slow down. Right? The world wants you to speed up. Right? Especially on social media. It wants you to produce content that gets engagement. And they need engagement. Right? And if you don't engage, it's this perverse incentive, right? Instead of rewarding people for producing, they punish people for not producing, which is a different approach, right? You're still getting to the same end. Things are being produced, right? But they're being produced out of desperation, not inspiration, right? So that honestly, it's that the deliberate practice is taking the outside world and shoving it away for a hot second so that you can just for a moment pay attention and slow down and then take the notes. Right? Go analog with it. Take out a notebook. I have hundreds of notebooks sitting around this office here where it's literally, I've got a notebook, I've got a deck of cards, there's a challenge that I have, mirrors help, cameras help. Right? Put your phone in selfie mode, right? Do the comparison, right? Palm a card, take a photo from the top of it, then don't palm a card and take a photo of your hand from the top of it. Do they look the same? Right? And if they don't, then you know how to do it. I literally did that and then printed out the photos and put one on a transparency and overlaid it. So I could look at the differences. And that was how I discovered that bone was there. Right? Those things, like the people who do that, that's why they make progress. That's why we call those people masters, is because they slow down long enough to take the notes and then care about what comes out. Right?
So we're going to try a new segment. You're the first person to be on the receiving end of this segment. So it could go perfectly smooth. It could go absolutely horrendously wrong. And we shall find out.
That sounds good.
So I'm going to switch over to our annotated cam, which you can't see, but the listeners at home can. And we are going to take a quick look at one of your incredible videos from over on Instagram. This is from back in 2020, so this is 5 whole years ago. And we'll take a quick look through it. And then if you want to break down sort of the ideas when you were putting this together, what you were thinking, and maybe how you developed up to that point, and maybe what you've developed on those moves now, because that was obviously 5 years ago. So let's take a quick look at this. Are we going to go audio or no audio? I think.
That's the music. It's got music. So
the music.
It doesn't have, like, I was
copyright.
Using like you should be copyright free on the music, because I was.
We'll be fine.
Real bad boy. I've got a ton of gravel in my shoes, girl on my shoulder, heart full of blues. I'm in the dirt, down in the dirt. I've been a real bad boy on the town all night. Starting to calm
a lot to unpack there, man. A lot to unpack.
Yeah, I was like, this part you brought on yourself. I remember we talked about this earlier. I was definitely afraid of 1 minute, so I was squeezing in as much as I could.
The section in which the card on the top of the deck vanishes really caught me off guard.
Okay.
I can't skip through an Instagram video, but I was like, okay, following. Where did that card go? And it's all absolutely stunning, man. Like the work that I mean, just as proof, Jason Ladani's in here like, yeah, that's fire. It's crazy. So, yeah, sensational. Can you talk us through sort of the development of those moves and what you were thinking when you put that together? Or more so, what you think when you put any of your Instagram content together? What do you approach it with? You mentioned that it was obviously jam sessions. Are you specifically working on one move? Or do you have a set list in mind, like here we're seeing a multitude of different things?
So if I'm being perfectly frank about it, I ran kind of headlong into the same issue that I did when I was a professional, which was eventually I started to collect a number of moves that I knew would play well on camera. The camera right there is doing something interesting. I started filming at a high shutter speed. So not frame rate. Frame rate was still 24 frames a second, but I upped the shutter speed, and that makes you look like you're moving faster than you are, right? Average, right? So like this right there is doing 24 frames a second at roughly 1/50th. I've got
that motion blur.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that's at 1/50th. If you film it where you have a higher shutter speed, right, where it's faster, then what you end up getting is you get a staccato effect. They aren't seeing a blur, right? And you would think that mentally that would mean that people are like, oh, like it comes off looking like stop motion, and it doesn't. Psychologically, it actually tricks the brain into thinking that people are moving faster than they are. So like when you see a lot of fight scenes, they actually up the shutter speed so that there's less blur and everything is much more...
It's with a harder impact.
Yeah, it hits harder. And so on some of the videos, I actually ended up doing that on accident. It's like, why does that look like I'm moving at like I had too much coffee, and that's why, right? So that actually happened on that video.
Like, thinking about that, you'd expect the higher shutter speed to make it more likely to catch little flashes and things like that, because obviously it's moving at a faster frame rate. But does it not do that?
It has the potential to, because you can't blur through it.
Yeah.
Right. So the longer you leave that open, right, the longer you leave the exposure, the more blur is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. If you start to remove the blur, that sharpens every single frame.
Yeah.
Right. Which means that anything that you would normally blur through, you can't. Right. You can't run from it. And the same thing happens, right? When you're doing, when you shoot at a higher frame rate, right? So say you're doing like 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second. It's technically the same principle. The only difference is the ratio between how much of each frame is actually being exposed given the time that it has available to it, right? And so you're just playing with those two things. In this instance, I always filmed in 24 frames a second, mainly because at some point somebody said, oh, 24 is cinematic, right? And I thought, I want all my things to look like a movie, not realizing there's like 1,000 other things that go into that.
Yeah.
And then I realized that if you if you shot at a higher frame rate, your camera would default to a faster shutter speed, right? And then if you go back to 24, it hasn't changed the shutter speed, right? So I was like, oh, I must not be, gauging the amount of light coming in, right? I got to adjust my ISO and everything. Well, what was actually happening is I was recording at a much faster shutter speed while at a slower frame rate, and it was giving this effect that I was moving faster than I was, right?
That's really cool.
Kind of fun, right? So like John Wick, just watch a John Wick film.
Yeah,
and you'll catch the same effect, right? So yeah, anyway, so on that video, that also only works if you know that the moves can stand up against that quick take, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of things that are absolutely high frame rate proof.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could do it at 120 frames a second. It doesn't matter because it has complete coverage. Right.
Yeah.
You're not basing it on the look away because cameras don't look away, and you're not basing it on the in between shutter. Right. You're not basing it on the fact that you're able to pull it off in the blur. Right. And so a bunch of those moves are not based on the blur, and they're not based on the look away. Right. They are based on the fact that you could dead stare it and you're still okay. Right. So actually, if you turn it back on, just shut off the sound, and I'll walk you through kind of what I'm doing.
Do you find it makes you consciously put in more effort to make the moves more perfect so that they are to the point where they're not hitting frames? Yeah.
Infinitely more so. The second you find out that it doesn't look away and you can't depend on the normal forms of misdirection, it forces you to, and it's recorded in 4K. So you have high resolution, high frame rate recording. If you're sucking at something, like you definitely rewatch that and think, oh man, I should practice more. Like it really,
eye-opening experience.
It does have that like inherent effect. So when they sent this to me, right, this was like a big release. So this is brief work control, right? To capture a group of aces, do a pharaoh shuffle. This is actually based on like a trick deck that you can get that does
card artistry. We're
rocking amok. That goes blue. This is a kickback ditch. It was the first YouTube video that I ever did. That's a 5-way manipulation. That's a Babel move. This is a double manipulation, and this is a muck called Nothing Happens. That's literally the title of it. That's not going anywhere. That's actually going in the middle, getting stolen out, pull out of the hand. This is actually being fired where it looks like, and then this is a giant S-lap. Right? And then this was sort of my signature thing of like, I'd like set the deck down and walk away like I was dropping a mic. Right?
It's very much, and what? And what?
Right. Each one of those, right? So like the brief work that I developed in terms of style, I got from Jason England initially. He did a lecture for EMC back in like 2011, where he talks about the ability to control things, right? Without having to use a trick deck, without having to use a brief, without having to do any of that. Or not a breather. Yeah. And I became obsessed with this, right? It was like brief work and jog work became an obsession for me. And that was one of the reasons why Ron put up with me, was because he did a lot of brief work. He does a lot of brief work in the hand. Picture that, right? Setting brief works, doing an in the hand riffle shuffle, and being able to do, think like in the hand zero on a riffle shuffle and have it be believable, right? Like stuff like that. And setting the brief so when he sets it down, he can send the brief in through to his partner or something like that, right? So that's the top one, and you could probably work out how the rest of that goes, right? Yeah. When we were talking about like a 5-stack control like that, right? Like a 5-stack lift. In most cases, when I'm doing stuff like that, I'm leaning on a breather. Either a breather on the packet that's coming up or a breather that gets left behind, right? Which enables me to manipulate it so that when I set the deck down, when I come down, I can grab what I need. Yeah. Right. And the reason why I normally do it on what's coming up is because when I shuffle, I bow up, right? So if you have a breather set normally, right, as you're shuffling, you're breaking that down over time, right? It becomes less dependable. If you set it in the reverse, it already leans itself in. So the only issue that you have to learn to do is this. Here, I'll show you, and I'm not tipping anything by doing this here. All right. So It is the difference between these two styles of shuffles, which is a hard bend versus a dovetail shuffle, which doesn't actually bend the cards, right? You're basically taking it and you're taking the pressure. Normally, when people learn to shuffle at the table, they learn to plant here and then really rock that, right? And if you look at the curve, that's pretty bad, right? So if you're rocking a breather, you're going to bend the hell out of it, right? But if you go and you set anchor points at the corners here, and then you're lifting, riffling that off is pretty easy. And it affords you a lot of control because the spread is so wide that you can peek as you're shuffling. It's softer on any gaffes that you may have set. It's easier to maintain brief work when you're doing that.
Perfect
because you're not bowing the card. Well. It's not effect. Yeah, like if I want to set a brief, I'm there, right? So that's a lot of what I'm doing in that is based on the brief work that I learned from Jason England's lecture, and then what Ron sent me through with. And then as I'm picking up doubles and doing all that, all the table work, a lot of that was Babel. A lot of that was just sitting and watching Babel, watching his moves and pilfering, changing. It's basically it's definitely the sleights I learned from him. It's just applied differently, right? The mucking thing, where the whole thing, nothing happens, right? Yeah. That was an exercise, right? It was the idea that you've got a dupe, right? And you've got one card and you're constantly mucking under a dupe so that nothing happens. Even though you swap them, nothing happens, right? And you do that over and over again, right? That's a cycle that you keep doing over and over again to train it. And then eventually I actually wanted to release that as a trick, but it's so heady, right? It's not quite the thing that you to me, I love it. And I think, oh my God, that's got to be really surprising and interesting. But it's amazing because nothing happened. Yeah. So it's sort of saying, hey, this is incredible because the bomb didn't go off.
Move. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's something should have happened and didn't. And everyone's cool, bro. Cool story. Yeah. And then this is the funniest thing that I ever learned, right? Is the fact that if you want to control, say I want to control, right, nine of spades, right? That is probably the most effective control that I've ever learned, right? Because it plays so well. Secondarily, if it's out and you need it to go in, it is ridiculously easy to make that fly, right? Even though it is one of those moments where this is the danger, right? When you talk about method, so very often the execution presents the potential method by reverse engineering, right? Yeah. The only way to get to that end, if it happens right next to the execution, is by the explanation, right? Is the execution, right? And this is actually something, right? Darwin talks about this, why you need to separate it in time, right? So if you do that move and you let it go and then you pick it up and you do the first shuffle, now it really looks mixed, right? The first one is oh, it's dead center. Maybe you're just good at cutting, right? But if you do it and set it down and chat and then you pick it up and do that first control, then it really sells it. And meanwhile, you're sitting there you know exactly what's going on. And then you can do whatever you want. So at speed, this would look like this, right? So I've got the ace, right? I'm going to put that in, right? I would sit down, I'd talk, I'd gesture, right? And then I'd give it a shuffle, do whatever I need to do. And now I've got it exactly where I need it so that I can go, here, if we did it, now I've got it, right? And then we were talking about, as you said, down, you could make it disappear. Right. So this is the thing, right? This is the chase, right? You're trying to chain them together in a way that makes sense, but doesn't offer an explanation by virtue of the execution.
Yeah.
And so much of what I do, if you stuck around for a while, or if you played it in slow-mo, it's not that you'll see what I'm doing, it's that the only way you get to the end is by the obvious explanation of what I did.
Yep.
Right?
And because it's too obvious, people don't think that's what's happening.
Right. So like you don't catch it in the moment, you catch it in the like it's like the prestige problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's you've got two answers. Either you have found a wizard who is, the premier technologist and also probably an actual wizard, and he has developed for you a machine that makes a perfect copy of you, but you have to kill the first one, or you've got a twin.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of those things.
I know which one it is.
Right. So like Occam's razor sometimes kicks in on a lot of these moves where the only explanation is the thing that you were doing, and that becomes the answer to people. It's not that it was magic. It's that, oh, you're very good with your hands, right? And I talked about this problem at one point in a YouTube video, that how you present things matters. And especially when you display your skill, I don't mind, right? I don't even classify myself as a magician anymore because the majority of what I do is sleight of hand. I'm not trying to be edgy. I'm trying to give due credit to the people who actually present things like narrative, right? It's me trying to like take a knee on the things that I don't feel qualified to speak on because I don't do it, right? And I remember, both Daniel and I kind of caught hell for going in that direction, but it is accurate, right? But also, you're taking something that would normally be magic, right? Would normally be something impossible, and moving it down to the very difficult, right? And so when you do sleight of hand, especially when you do it online, the problem is if you take credit for it, right? If you say, oh, this is sleight of hand, or you take credit for it by showing where it went, right? One of the most popular videos that I ever posted was a behind the scenes look, right? It's what it looks like when I'm doing the controls of a single card and it's passing all around, right? And it's cool to see, right? But people who know magic get to see it and they think, oh man, that's really difficult, right? But people who don't know magic and see that go, I knew he was doing something, like this explains it all, right? And now everything that I've done before then has now been lowered to, oh yeah, he's just really good with his hands, right? Which is not an advantage in magic. It's hugely advantageous on Instagram, not great when you've got to perform for more than a minute, So it's, I don't know, it's sort of like it's a blessing and a curse, a bit of a catch-22, honestly. Like, again, you got to pick your poison, right? Either you got to deal with the fact that you are going to take credit for something, and that gets you a lot of play on social media. It does, right? But it also means that when you go that road, it doesn't afford you the ability to do magic-y things because they already know that you can do things that no one's going to catch with your hands, right? But if you do magic, people have a very short attention span, right? And so like the best people that I've ever seen who could combine the two, like Johan. Have you ever seen Johan work?
What's Johan's surname?
Johan Fontaine, I think.
Name rings a bell.
Okay, all right. So this is great. This is perfect. I get to introduce you to somebody. Johan ran a website called Magical Sleight. And he collected all of the people. Like, you go to Madrid for narrative structure and magic theory. You go to France for aesthetics, right? Nobody handles cards more beautifully than the French. I will die on this hill to prove this, right? So Johan was one of the people who sort of showcased that to the world, right? And it was like all these cardists and card magicians who the way that they handle is just as aesthetically pleasing as the magic is conceptual, right? So it's like they raised the handling to meet the expectations aesthetically that people were feeling narratively. And it's gorgeous, right? And very few people can do that. The Bell's a perfect example of this, right? You've seen the way that he handles cards. It's like he was born with them. Elegant. And then he decided to learn to dance with them too, right? Johan very much does the same thing, right? And he found a whole bunch of people that were kind of like him, but honestly, I'm not kidding you, nobody does it like Johan.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, there you go. Look up Johan.
It's going to be a deep dive.
Yoann.
Going to be a deep dive. No doubt that'll be a wormhole I'll get lost into the next week.
Here's what happened. So this is why he and I get along. It's because, number one, he also has a bunch of boys at home and he had to take a break and all that. But also, when he came out with Magical Sleight, I went nuts. I went on this and I bought everything off the website. It's like what I did with Eddie McCall. Like, I saw this. I was like, oh my God, I'll sell a camera.
Everything.
I don't care. That's fine. And I bought everything and he let you download it. And I have kept a copy of everything off that website on every phone that I have ever had. I create a folder on there with everything from Magical Sleight because it's gone now, right?
No way.
And I rewatch it every once in a while. And honestly, a lot of what I was doing on Instagram was I wanted to be part of that crowd.
Yeah.
I wanted to be considered like good enough to hang with that crowd, right? Because I wanted to be aesthetically pleasing. I suck at cardistry, right? Part of that is the tremor that I've got in my hands, right? I can't hold them at my fingertips for very long without it shaking out, right? But if I've got a table, it's like having a whole other part of your body that just holds things for you, right?
Yeah.
Precisely. So then I could like go nuts on it and you can do all sorts of fun, fancy things on a table, right? And so that sort of became the way that he and I got connected was what he was doing in the hands, I was trying to do at the table.
So cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited to take that deep dive. And
you should. He's got a whole Patreon and everything. Like he's like what he did. Okay, so what Ben did for like the family, this guy did for aesthetic card magic, but he did through Patreon.
Okay.
So it's one of those things. Like I've been part of the family since day one. I've been part of Johan's thing since day one. It just like I'll support like until I gotta like sell my truck to afford groceries, I'm going to keep those memberships. Like that's, so anyway, so all of this was a favor. I want to say this deck was Aaron Fisher. Is that yeah. So Aaron at one point had a friend say, if you send decks out to a couple of people, they'll showcase them and everything. So he reached out to me. He was willing to send me a few of them. And so I created this video as a favor to him to use for like promotion and everything. Yeah. And then I said that I would post it on mine because at the time I had a larger following on Instagram than he did. Yeah. And that became my thing, right? It was basically like I wasn't releasing anything. And all the decks that I was making were through Illusionist. And Illusionist had a much bigger list than anything I was going to reach online. Yeah. So they were largely taken care of. But it became like a pattern where I'd have these friends that would create these beautiful decks. They would send them to me and I would create these videos that they could then use however they wanted. And I got to, I've got like an obscene number of decks now that I can use whenever I want. And the funniest thing is that me and my friends all said that the biggest goal that we had was what if magic companies would like send us free cards? We're like, no way. That would never happen. And then all of us like ended up getting like free cards. And that it is one of those things where you find out the goal you set is generally the goal you'll hit,
Yeah.
So yeah, but that was the impetus for that video.
Incredible. Yeah, well, that's it. That's a pretty successful first attempt at that segment. So thank you very much for...
I think you did great. I think we did all right. I hope I spoke in code well enough so that everyone like knows what the hell I'm talking about, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure Big Ass Lap was pretty...
I'm sure that probably, yeah.
Pretty...
I'm hoping that came across exactly as one of my...
Pretty explanatory.
Yeah.
Incredible. Obviously, you mentioned there that you went from Instagram, you sort of took a backseat on that as you started moving through the journey. I can imagine after 8 years solid of doing it day in, day out, and editing and keeping up with the repetition, it becomes a lot, I can imagine. You then moved across to YouTube and you started doing interviews with prolific minds, a lot of underground people that I'd certainly haven't heard of. A lot of people in the gambling world and a lot of people who have been mentors to you. And they're some absolutely phenomenal talks. Like the content in those are like just little golden nuggets that you take and you're like, okay, I'm going to apply that to what I do. And yeah, you were asking the right questions. Across those interviews, what have been the key takeaways from those discussions. Is there anything from those interviews with those people that you took and like stick out as big things?
Everybody that I interviewed because they were a specialist in my mind.
Yeah.
I've got like a running joke about me that I don't have friends. I just collect savants. and I wish that were untrue, but it's true. So all of the friends that I have, one of the reasons that we become friends is because they're obsessed about like some micro thing, just like I am.
Yeah.
Right. So like Andrei Pshenichka, right? He created the
butterflies. Yeah.
Right. All right. So when he and I first met, he had just come up with this. He was on prototype version 2, and he was at Magic Live, and he was doing these incredible things with this deck. And I became obsessed with this because he was doing something super weird that I couldn't figure out. And I said, if you will teach me, I will teach you ripping.
Yeah.
And so we shared this with each other, and we were besties ever since, right? That's like, we both ended up being in the 52 because of our obsessions, right?
Yeah.
And so like each of the person that I was interviewing, I interviewed Steve Valentine because of the story of the Russian. Yeah. I interviewed him because I went to his private show in LA, and I was flabbergasted. I went to go see that show 3 times because I was so obsessed with it, right? I interviewed David Malik because David Malik will break everything down to like a micrometer. Yeah, just as small and as tight as you possibly can, right? I interviewed Jason Ladany because no one practices harder than him. I've never met anyone who will flat out practice riffle stacking a particular amount for 4 hours straight.
Yeah, it's beyond discipline at that point.
You can blind stack 8 hands while having a conversation with you. You tell him how many hands are at it, and he'll blind stack all of them, right? And then there were other people like Eddie McCall, right? Yeah. Eddie has the best push-through shuffle I've ever seen, right? He's got the best strip out. He has some of the best shuffle work in general that I've ever just witnessed. Perseus I interviewed because no one is better at the concept and communicating the importance of scripting than him. And he's got the body of work to prove it, right? Yep. There's a project that he's working on right now where it showcases it, right? Where he presents a theme, right? Some particular type of effect, and then all of the different ways you could present that same type of effect with different narrative structures, right?
Okay.
But each of the people that I was in, perfect example, Ron. I interviewed Ron because Ron had never been on YouTube, and I wanted people to know who this guy was. I wanted people to understand all the work that goes into something like this, right? And Ron can do some of the... I've got film of Ron doing a standard casino procedure, shuffle, shuffle, box, shuffle, cut, where none of the cards move, right? And you watch it, and it looks like everything's moving around. Nothing's moving, right? Stuff like that where I wanted these people on there so that way people could find out why I was obsessed with them. There's still something like 10 interviews that I never got around to editing because it ended up getting for real, right? Yeah. Like I had multiple children, and one of them is special needs. And it turns out like the only way that I could be the dad that I wanted to be the husband that I wanted to be was I should have done the smart thing. I should have gone to everybody and said, hey, I love this and I want to continue to do it. I can't do it right now. And I should have set it down. And instead, I held on to it during that time. And with all the weight of everything else, I watched it fall through my fingers when it would have been easier to say, I'll be back as soon as I can. It's just now is not the season, right? And so all these interviews are just waiting for me to like run it through like an AI system now and have it just, kick it out and everything. Yeah. But these are all like I've got an interview with John Galsworthy. I've got an interview with Victor Pina, right? All of these things where each of them, they were specialists. I've got an interview with Ben Earl. All of them were remarkable in some way, shape, or form. And if I learned anything from doing that, it was how much I don't know, how much I used to, before that interview, I thought I was good. And then I got done with the interview. And I was like, oh man, I've got a lot of work to do. This is going to take a long time, right? And I'm sure you've experienced this, right? You brush up against somebody and you find out that when you base your entire assumption about somebody's work on the outcome of the work, as opposed to the process, when you hear the process, you're like, wait, you were inspired by that? Like, why would that? And then they tell you the connection. And you're like, of course, that all makes sense now, right? Like it is, when you learn the context of the creativity, you find out how many things that have nothing to do with magic have built some of the most beautiful magic you've ever watched, right?
Yeah.
And that was, go ahead.
I was going to say, having moved more so into the consultancy side of things now, I don't perform anymore. The majority of the stuff I do is consulting for like theaters and things like that. It allows you to have a completely different appreciation for the process and for what goes into the behind the scenes leading up to the effect and all of the things around what is on display,
right,
that nobody has the chance to fully appreciate. And when you have that deeper appreciation, it makes what's on display even more beautiful, because you know the time, the effort, the work, the thought that's gone into making this thing exactly what it is, the months of rehearsals, the constant chopping and changing until the day of actually doing it. It just
leaving yourself enough room during the performance so that you can adjust with each performance. You want to become a better card magician, read a book about writing books.
Yep.
Right? If you want to become a better coin handler, go read a book about kinesiology. Right? Like it is remarkable, and this is what I mean. When you look at magic not as a lens, but as a canvas, then everything inspires it. All of these things that would normally have nothing to do with magic, because if you were looking through the lens of magic, you're only seeing the magic colored things.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's this canvas that you draw and that you lay yourself onto, that you make of based on what you are, then everything that has made you and everything that inspires you and all the things that speak to you now are part of that. So like when I present card magic, I don't present it as magic, because to me that's something numinous.
Yeah.
Right? That's something like, if you try to hang on to it, if you try to define it, it will surpass you. It will fall through your fingers, right? But I can explain magic as psychology, right?
Yeah.
I can explain magic as mechanics, and I can explain magic as the way we think about the world, the way we see the world, right? That we don't process things linearly, because if we did, we couldn't figure out how to make time seem like it's reversing, right? Things like that. And I found out that doing that made what I was presenting more magical, not less, mainly because I was invested in it, right? So when I do Ambitious Card, it's actually a history lesson in magic, right? I'm telling the story of Houdini and Vernon, and how this is sort of what you end up doing, and how far you push it sort of tells you where you are in the process. And as I'm doing that, I'm doing those things, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm inadvertently building up the suspense on what it's capable of and where this card can actually be found, to the point where at the end it's found in a place there's no way it could be, right? Ever. And that ended up being a much stronger approach than the other way, which is like, oh, I'll present it as a magic trick, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the card by its ambition has raised to the top, right? This is the thing. But again, I learned that by hanging out with each of these people and having them tell me their stories, how they got to their point where they sort of found like the thing that they most like doing and the thing that they're best suited for. And as it turns out, I'm better as a teacher, right?
Yeah.
I am better at presenting magic as a lesson than I am presenting magic as a magician. And what's funny is when I started doing that, I came off as more of a magician than ever before, because I was taking them along with me, right? It was very like intrinsic. I had to learn to trust that I could present it that way. And then extrinsically, I was getting a lot of positive feedback on that because people were hanging around for the lesson, right? Yeah. So, I don't know, maybe one day I'll get the moniker professor, but until then, it's fine. You're like,
again, it comes back to authenticity, doesn't it? Like, if you're portraying yourself as something that you feel you are and you enjoy and you actually want to do, that comes across. The audience that you're performing for can feel that truth. If you're performing for the sake of performing, because that's how magic should be, according to the books and according to what everybody else says, then that's also going to come across not necessarily in a positive light.
Yeah, fair. But you also got to, like, number one, it takes a lot of self-confidence, right? It takes a lot of trust in the parts that you think are truly yourself. And you get that either by experimentation or you just get it by introspection, right? Yeah. Every majorly deeply effective magician I've ever met, everyone who like I saw and I was like, this is an elevation of the art form. Every last one of them was a journaler, right? They kept notebooks with them everywhere they went, right? Like even I still to this day, like, I've got this guy. This goes with me everywhere. This goes with me everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that you got to sit there and say, man, I got to be profound. It's that you just got to look in for a while and you got to like review, right? You got to like look back at all of the feedback, right? It took me a really long time to figure out that teacher was probably the vocation, and that magic just happened to be the medium. I didn't figure that out for like 25 years. And I know that because for those first 25 years, nothing was hitting. It wasn't, I was good. I was strong, right? I could do the mechanics and everything. And I could present, I was basically like a carbon copy of somewhere between Ricky Jay and Gregory Wilson and like the card stunts days. And that was great. I had like a thing of like, oh yeah, he can do fancy things with cards, right? He's a card magician. And I hated that. And then when people found out that I could do other things, like I could speak, right? That really did change things. So I would say explore that. Just go through that process of take the feedback from the outside world, figure out who it is that you are first and foremost intrinsically, right? Collect all of the things that are causing your brain to fire. Collect all of the teachers, right? And then sit down and do the hard work of trying to find out the common aspects of each of those. Why is it that makes your brain fire? For me, there was aesthetics, right? I loved watching beautifully handled cards, right? And then with the Madrid boys, I loved beautiful narratives. But that's also true in wonderful teaching, right? Yeah. You watch someone give a lesson on something like art history that you don't think that you'd care about, and they can get you to care about it. Why is that?
Yeah.
Right? That's another thing, right? You want to become a better magician? Read a book about teaching children.
We can learn a lot from kids. We can learn a lot from children.
Number one, I'm one of those guys who absolutely believes that if you are, if you're facing off against a 7-year-old, you're probably going to lose. As far as sleight of hand is concerned, like 35 years in the seat at this, I've never fooled a 7-year-old in my life. Like not once.
They're like Penn and Teller on crack.
Transition of the brain. They don't look where you think they're going to look. They don't process the way you think they're going to process, and they always get to the answer.
Yeah.
Like I never do coins for my kids ever because they just know, right? Like this is, but no, I do think that there is something to that, and that you would never find that out by reading this.
Yeah.
Right. There's a few maybe, right? That like psychology magic, right? Stuff like that. But even that is meta, right? Yeah. It's not direct application. It's not, this is my book of business. This is my repertoire. This is the effect. This is the description. So you know you're going to invest in it. And this is the method and how you should present it in the script and the pattern and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
That's how magic books have been written for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you come across something where it's, you should probably study theater. These are the most inspirational thoughts I've gotten from this one author, Arthur Brooks, right? Yeah. So like Helder's book is a lot like that. Helder's book is functionally an art book that just happens to be about magic, right? Yeah. Anything written by Darwin Ortiz, right? is functionally a book about human psychology and the way we process information, and it just happens to use magic as the mechanism for that, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why these things are so important is because they are the link between our world and the outside world to show that they are the same world. It's just the mechanism we chose to focus on, and that you can use everything from the outside world to elevate the thing that you're doing, that you could raise the level of the presentation of your mechanism because you are not using only what the mechanism can generate to elevate it, right? Eventually it will run out of fuel. If it's a closed system, eventually entropy will kick in and it will become inert. The only way it stays organized and grows is if it has energy from the outside. So open the damn system, right? Pull inspiration from somewhere else so that what you do raises.
So, a beautiful piece of advice for hopefully people to ponder on and maybe apply to what they're doing. And
yeah,
take
sorry, that's going to be a thing. Like, if you guys are going through this interview hoping like I'm going to give short answers, that is a mistake from the outset, and I'm very sorry.
We're not here for short answers. That's not what this podcast's about. We do 3-hour episodes, so
you make a strong point. That's
quick fire questions is not what we do, evidently.
Okay. Good.
The next question comes from having listened to another interview with yourself. I believe this is somewhat of a mantra either to yourself or to your family, if I remember correctly, and it is, what does the phrase "take nothing for granted" mean to you?
Take nothing for granted. So it's a bit of a I hate to say it because it may come off as like broicism, but Stoic philosophy of memento mori, right?
Yep.
Is cliche because it is universally true.
Yeah.
And easy to avoid in a distracted world, right? And the more powerful version, I think, of memento mori is to remember that everything you have could be taken.
Yeah.
And you may yet live. And you must live with that loss, right? More importantly, you may be forced to live with the loss that you did not take something seriously, or that you did not tell somebody how you really felt. You did not invest in the thing that you truly did care about for fear of failure. You did not protect the thing that needed protecting because it could not speak for itself, right? And though it seems morbid, it is very freeing because it immediately prioritizes what you should do.
Yeah.
Right? It puts in very clear relief what is actually important. And the easiest way to take nothing for granted is to remember it can be taken from you.
Yep.
Right? Marriages may end. People may pass away, right? Books may fall into the trash, right? Or fade with time. People's knowledge starts to fade. Your hands give up, right?
Yeah.
All of these things, like everything that you have for now, right? And it is transient. It doesn't have to stay that way from day to day, right? There's a story of like a guy who got into an argument with his wife, and he's talking to an older man that he works with, and he goes, "You should really do something about that." And he goes, "Yeah, I'll tell her when I get home." And he goes, "Who told you that?" And he goes, "Told me what?" He goes, "Who told you you would make it home?"
Wow.
And it's true,
yeah.
Right? You have no idea. So like, as you walk out the door, tell your kids that you love them.
Yeah.
You get into a fight, find a way to resolve that quickly. Or at a minimum, say, even though we're fighting, I love you dearly, right?
Yeah.
If it's the magic side of things, this is the tough part, is that you're telling people who are very regularly told that you need to create content consistently and don't care about it. Just post, right? If you take that philosophy too far, what you post will get attention. Attention may garner you fame. It may garner you money. It may garner you recognition. And as Thomas Aquinas pointed out, all of that means nearly nothing, right? It's useful, but nearly nothing. Here's what I would say. Make something you're proud of. And learn to be proud of the things that are imperfect, right? Because that too is worth it. right? So many people try to hide the work. They try to hide the imperfections so that it looks like they came out amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure. Okay. That creates a storyline, but that storyline is very difficult to maintain. And the way you know that is when they age, they fight desperately to keep the reputation by not doing anything that would harm that. Right? So, did you see Ricky Jay performing a lot as an older man? No. And that's because his legend had outgrown his capability and he wanted the legend. And so he didn't.
Yeah.
He lived in, very rightly, he had earned the legend.
Yeah.
But the legend became very, very important, right? The secret, the mystery, all of this became very important. And, you know, I get it, right? You don't want to be seen as falling behind or anything like that. But I promise you, looking back on the work that I did, I remember my YouTube videos far more than I remember anything from Instagram. The only thing I remember from Instagram is what Instagram got me, which was a massive network of friends and hugely valuable teachings, most of which happened in person. And I got to travel, I got to make cool cards, but nearly none of it has directly to do with Instagram.
Yeah.
Right? Each video, in my mind, was a practice session. And as you watch it progress into something different and everything. And eventually it served its purpose. It had its time. And then I moved over to YouTube and I realized I could talk magic for longer than a minute. I likely won't ever do magic for longer than a minute, but I could talk magic for a minute and I could teach people why it matters.
Yeah.
Right? I look back on that with great pride. Even though my YouTube stuff was far smaller by metrics than anything I did on Instagram, I look back on the YouTube stuff and it took something of me to make it.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for what it took of me to make it. Right. And so, yeah, this whole thing of like, take nothing for granted, the full saying is take nothing for granted, have nothing to regret. Right. You can only regret, not grieve, but regret the things that you took for granted. Right. If it's, you know, the good opinions of somebody or the caring or something like that. If it's the fame, the acolytes, the money, all of it, right? If you took it for granted, meaning that you assumed that either it would always be there or you didn't care that it was there in the first place, when it is gone and you feel its loss, if you took it for granted, it is much different than if you appreciated it. Yeah. If you appreciate it, you grieve, right? You grieve its loss and you suffer, but you suffer less than the person who did not acknowledge it as it was to them, right? So yeah, I would say like that's one of the other reasons why, like when I talk about practice, slowing down forces you to appreciate the process in a way that speed will never do.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter if you learn it faster. If the roots don't sink deep, it will fail you eventually, right? But if you've put in the work, there's a guy, what's his name? George something, wrote a book on mastery. And the one lesson that I took from this is that mastery in one area is effectively mastery in everywhere else, because if you can learn to master a thing, the skill of mastering something transfers very easily, right? George Leonard, that's his name. That is true only if you slow down.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not producing at breakneck speed, because if you're constantly trying to produce at breakneck speed, there is no time to appreciate either the process or the outcome, because you'll even see these, right? All the big guys tell you, okay, produce something and then don't get stuck on how it does. Just move on. Go create something new. Go create something new, which is excellent for the process of creativity, is not exceptional for the process of legacy, for gratitude, for anything, you know, like you could backfit it. Probably you could do a post hoc explanation of, I'm grateful for the process of what it felt. But each piece of work, if you're moving at that pace, you couldn't invest yourself long enough after it's been produced to appreciate it.
Actually, yeah.
Fully. So this was one of the things, the last video that I created on my YouTube channel talked about the hungry neutral algorithm, right? That it's like a dragon, right? Easy to please, very difficult to satisfy,
Yeah.
Right? And there's a perverse incentive. If the product for the algorithm is not to show you, but to produce engagement from the person watching it, the way it incentivizes interaction is misaligned, right? You produce, and it will either say, produce something that generates engagement, or if you cannot do that, produce what gets engagement at all at whatever level you can produce and produce a greater number of it, right? And as a result, it means that you get caught in this loop of either you are becoming bombastic or sensational, a la Justin Flom, right? Or you are trying to produce far more than mastery would honestly allow.
Yeah.
Right? And think of it like if you took a sword master and said, I need you to produce enough that Walmart could sell them. Well, now eventually you got to move to a factory.
Yeah.
Right? And now you don't have this beautiful blade. You basically have something that is steel pressed because it's more efficient, right? And yeah, I do think that there is something to explore there as far as like efficiency versus effectiveness versus something you give a damn about. Put away all the taglines, put away all those words, and just take a second, hold everything that you've ever created, and ask yourself, one, can you remember it? Right? And if you can't, do you want to? And then secondarily, are you proud of it? Are you glad that you invested all this time into producing this thing? Now, again, it may not be the thing that you care about. It may be the outcome, right?
Yep.
If you need to produce enough money for your family and the only way you could do that was to produce crazy content online, well, then the thing that you really care about is your family.
Yeah.
In which case you may be justly proud, right?
Yeah.
But if it is the thing that you're creating and you hold it and you are not proud of it or you cannot remember it, something has gone amiss. Something is wrong, right? So slow down. Take the notes. Let it infuse itself into you. Let it color your language. Let it affect the way that you see the world and think, and take everything that you're getting from the outside and invest it back in this thing that you care about so much. And then breathe deep. The world doesn't move as fast as we would like to believe, right?
Yeah.
And also, the world likely doesn't move as fast as we are afraid it does, right? We are taught that, right? This is the other thing, and this is, here is my other like gripe, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with the magic world, but it's magic adjacent.
Yep.
The largest and fastest growing accounts on social media generally have to do with how to grow on social media.
Yeah.
Right? Which means technically there's no product. Right? It's like creating a consultancy about how to be an effective consultant. Right? Eventually you have to ask yourself, like, is there actually a product here? It's that line from, what is it you do here? Right? I think when it comes to producing magic online, a lot of what grows so quickly has more to do with the concept of growing quickly than the thing itself, right? The work, the art, right? And so we can get caught up in this thing of like focusing on the growth, but growth for growth's sake is the ideology of the cancer.
Yeah.
Right? There is a lifespan to things, and it is okay that something may be good and temporary. The jam that I had lasted 7 years, every Monday for 7 years. That is a season, right? I may be justly proud of that. Could I do it again? Probably not. I'm not in that season of life. I'm still very glad that I did it, right? Instagram has a lifespan, right? A lot of the work that you care about may not be scalable or may not live on into perpetuity, right? And you may have to adjust with that, but it doesn't mean that that thing is meaningless or a bad strategy, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't make it, even if it is temporary, even if it doesn't get you the end as quickly as some other strategy, right? Because I've known a lot of YouTubers. I've known a lot of guys who, like, they grew very fast and they became fabulously wealthy and they've got the fame and everything. And I can tell you that when I talk with those ones, they look tired.
Yep.
Right? Whereas the ones that I know who, they always fell back to the thing that was mostly them.
What they love. Yep.
you look at them and their eyes don't look nearly as tired. Or if they do look tired, it's because they have the crow's feet from smiling so much, right? Like that I would chase every day of the week, especially where magic is concerned. I love this. I love it dearly. And also, I would give it up in an instant for my kids. And I have, right?
Yeah.
I would throw it on a fire instantaneously for my wife, for my family, right? And that is my priority.
Yeah.
But after that, right? Like after like magic and my profession here, because it's a family business, nothing else kind of takes the cake, right? So as long as what I'm doing doesn't interfere with all those other things, everything else can take a back seat because I love this that much. And it took a long time to figure that out, right? But that means that every offer that is ever presented to me is weighed against that level of priority. Right? Someone says, oh, I'll put you on AGT. AGT means travel. AGT means consultancy. AGT means all these things that I don't care about in comparison to the most important things in my hierarchy. No, absolutely not. That will go very poorly for everyone involved, right? So I do think, like, if you are chasing this, it's important to just keep the first things, right? The most important things should remain the most important things. And if you have to sacrifice, let the sacrifices be things that you are willing to look back on and say, it is worth it. And you have to be so smart about who you are deep inside that you could look at that and say, I likely won't regret having invested that, right? And usually that's time, usually that's energy, usually that's money, right? But if it's relationships, right, tough to get back, right? If it's time with the people that you love, it's tough to get back, right? If you find a way to include them, spectacular. But that is the tough part about this, especially when you're a creative, especially when you're on social media and everything. The cost is so well hidden, right? You know what this is like. Creating videos like this, the time you put in to create something that you're proud of, right?
The level that I want to, the level that I'm proud of putting forwards, there's some days I spend 3+ straight days on top of work, on top of everything else, just getting out a single edit. And nobody sees that. Nobody cares about that. But I do, and that's why I do it, and it's why I keep doing it, because I enjoy it. Like, sure, it's tough, it's hard, as you very well know.
Right.
But it's the passion that drives you through.
It's a dead giveaway to the mastery of it, right? It's a dead giveaway. Like the fact that you're doing that, right? The way you know somebody loves it is they'll be bad at it and they'll still love it, right?
That's exactly what this is.
Right? Yeah, right. It's fucking chess. I love it. Right? That entire shelf is all chess, right? I realize we're sort of meandering off the topic, but like whenever I think about that whole, take nothing for granted, have nothing to regret, when I touched loss, it made me grip on to the things that I found out were the most important. Magic ended up being one of them, right? And ever since then, it's always weighed against that. Everything that I've done ever since then, pretty consistently weighed against the things that I grabbed onto very tightly, right? And I was lucky. The things I grabbed onto were good, right? So many people, when they suffer loss, they may grab onto something that is a balm instead of, right? Like it's medicine, but it's not food, right?
Yeah, something that's good in the moment, but long term is not healthy.
It may be soothing for a time, but it's not a lifestyle, right? And sometimes, like, I'll see that happen with social media, right? If somebody is if they've taken a hit or they've suffered a loss, they double down, and then they get big, but they're no happier, right? You don't see the crow's feet; you just see the bags under their eyes, right?
Yep.
So if you're not going to take anything for granted, I do think that's a great place to start. Just make the hierarchy of the things that matter most to you, and it's not even that you have to put it in order. Just make the list, man. And then go through that list and say, okay, whatever I do, whatever ambitions I have, even in this world, it can go up to that list and no further. When it goes up to that list and then starts to pull down that list, then I know there's a problem. Right? Yeah, then it's time. Then it's okay. That was what I ran into. Honestly, that was a few years back. It started to do that, right? The social media thing got It got too close to my kids.
Close. Yeah.
It got too close to my family, right? They were missing out on time with me and I was missing out on time with them, right? And I thought, no dice, can't do it,
Yeah.
right? And it was embarrassing and it was hard and it was good that it happened because it put in very clear relief what mattered most to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what that saying is all about. And that's why I keep like pasting it over. It's why it's all over my office. You know?
Yeah. It's those struggles that we learn from it's those kinds of things like loss especially has a very quick way of making you realize exactly what's important and exactly what matters in life. Like I lost my grandfather months ago and realizing how fast things can change.
Right.
I realized like doing what I enjoyed was so much more important than doing what other people wanted me to do or doing what society said was right or doing stuff for the sake of money or for the sake of living this nice lifestyle. I'd much rather take happiness, joy, and friendship over money any day of the week.
Right.
Like every
right. And
day.
that's the thing. It doesn't, this is the tricky thing about art. You know, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life is a lie.
Yeah.
It is a lie. And it's a beautiful lie, but it's pretty philosophy. It's, you know, it doesn't actually have teeth because there are all the consequences that no one ever talks about. There's all the burnout. There's all the things that, like, when you turn what you're doing into a profession, you are weighing its strength against the world. And the world is heavy, right? And it wants you to move quickly. And it is not built for the showcase of mastery. At the moment, the predominant concern seems to be attention, right? Attention and behavior. And if what you're doing does not garner those two things, then it is not valued as it should be.
Yeah.
But if you can take it and remove the pressure of economy, right? Remove the profession aspect, take it seriously, but take yourself lightly about it, I feel like you'll probably make more progress.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is the thing, like, I really do think it's better to have a job and do magic on the side, and you'll probably do better at magic.
Yeah.
Because that again, that's anecdotal. That's the way it worked out for me, right? I know Shin is a professional magician, and he has one of the biggest shows on the planet in Vegas, and he has one of the best contracts that I've ever known. And it turns out we are different humans enough that I could not do what he does.
Yeah.
Right? I could not apply the pressure of that to what I do and have the thing that I do survive that pressure.
Yeah.
Right? So I found a way to do it in a way that I love, that still I get to keep all the things I love. Does it limit what it can produce for me? Absolutely. And I'm good with that. Right?
But it's still not touching that hierarchy. So.
It doesn't touch it, right? It doesn't break into the thing that I care about most.
Yeah.
And again, the guys that I know who are epically successful, even when it does, they found a way, not that it should cause sacrifice, but that the lifestyle is built specifically to support it.
Yeah.
Right? They have a studio built into their house, which allows them to record without leaving home. Right?
Yeah.
Or they record it. Yeah. Right. This is things like that. Like it really is. I hope that I can remember that. Right? I want everyone, yeah, absolutely. If we all sort of live that way, I feel like we might be in a slightly better world. But I hope that I don't forget it, because the world is fast and the input is a lot. And it's very easy to forget the best lessons of your life because you forget them or you get distracted. So
many lessons.
Right? That's why I got these, right? This is courage and this is humility. I got them so I couldn't look away, right? I got it so that way I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to, but sometimes you do, and then you're reminded, oh, I should pick it back up, right? Yeah. That's the same thing with regret and gratitude, right? Is that if you do forget, you will regret. And that's a terrible poem, but it's true, right? If you do forget these things, and so very often it is attention. What you put your attention to is effectively your life, right? Oliver Berkman made that point. 4,000 Weeks, I think it was. What you pay attention to is your life. because that's what forms your memories, right? If you want to not regret something, if you want to not take something for granted, you have to pay attention to it. In order to give your attention to it, you must sacrifice that attention you would apply towards something else.
Yeah.
And the something else that you would apply it to, you may love. You just don't love it as much as the other thing, right?
Yeah. It comes back to slowing down and stepping back, doesn't it?
Word.
It's like everything's moving so fast, and if you take a second to step back, you can start remembering those life lessons, and you're not just working on spur of the moment and reacting to the situation. You're acting as you should.
Yeah.
Acting on your morals as opposed to acting on impulse.
Yeah, the better version of yourself. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that's what that saying is, and it's on there, like on that deck of cards. I think because at the time when that was produced, my sons, I had 2 sons at the time. I didn't even have my third, and it was put into, I was getting a very clear picture that, number one, I'm not the main character,
yeah,
right, and number two, like, I'm a character, right, and I can be as big as I want, but I'm not the main one, right. And if you have kids and you're any sort of parent, right, you know that so much of who you are going to have to sacrifice at least a little bit if you want to be there for it, right? Yeah. The attention you would normally apply to yourself, you got to set aside so that way you can take care of the small being that needs you, right? And if you answer that call well, the payback is beyond all measure. Yeah. But in a way that you can only feel, right? All these things, all these like joys and everything, they sound cliche because they are universally true, right? If you sacrifice for someone or something that needs you, right, what they give you back is incredible, right? When I did if we linked it back to the magic thing, I spent a lot of years reinvesting back in the magic world. And what it gave me was companionship and friendship and growth. And like, I got to create things that were only in my head, right? I got to create a dedication deck for my dad that I got to give to my entire family to honor my dad. Never would have done that, right? Never would have had the chance outside of what the magic community gave me, right? I will never, I hope, for as long as my memory will last, I hope I never take that for granted, right? Now, eventually I did have to stop giving, right? Eventually I had to step away. And eventually I did have to like start taking, right? I had to cash in a couple of favors and everything. And they very willingly did, right? It is sort of that Gary Vaynerchuk thing, the jab, 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 right hook, but with less of like a commercial bent to it, right? I was there with a lot of people, and as much as I could, I wanted to be there for people. And then when I really needed help, the people that were there, I knew were there for the rest of my life, right? So yeah, that's. I am grateful for all that, but all that stems from just doing my damnedest to not take it for granted.
Beautiful life lesson to live by, and advice that hopefully people take with them themselves. And next time you get told why you shouldn't be doing the type of magic that you're doing, tell that person to stick it up their backside and
that's
keep doing
exactly
what you
right.
love.
Yeah. Screw the haters. Really, that's the life lesson. Yeah. That's it's, what's funny is that I've had very few beefs, right? I don't know if you like get this vibe, but I'm, functionally like the Mr. Rogers of close-up magic, right? But I've had very few beefs, and I come from, I had 2, brothers, and so I also have like a genetic predisposition toward anti-authority. So whenever I get into like beefs like that part comes out pretty quick. And then I remember, like, in so many ways, this is all so easy. This is all, like, when you break it down, in so many ways, this doesn't matter. In the long run, this too will fade, right? And the arguments that we were getting into early days about what mattered most to magic seem so petty now. They seem so ridiculous 10 years out, right? Looking back on it 10 years. But it is that thing of like, you got to go through that, right? Like there's a range of, God grant me the self-confidence of a 27-year-old life coach, right? Because, right, they've done a little bit of living and there's enough confidence in there. But that's what every 20-something should have, right? Because that's what helps you get out in the world. But you hit 40 and you look back on yourself at 20 and you're like, oh man, I was making a lot of assumptions right back then. So like I look at the beefs that we used to have on like Instagram and stuff. And for me, it was like getting rid of trolls. I hated the idea of trolls, right? Even now, I don't suffer trolls, right? And so when someone would like come in and start trolling like a kid that was trying his best, I'd blast them. Oh, very not Mr. Rogers. Very, very much not like that approach. And I look back on it now, and a lot of the arguments that like I got in on, in so many instances, they weren't wrong.
Yeah.
Right. It's just their approach may have been off. Right. And now also, raising kids, you got to learn to like lower your voice. Right. And so like I look back on so many of those arguments I used to get into early days, and I thought, man, it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't matter. And also it matters in the sense that you can appreciate the points of view now. Yeah. You can look back on all of this and think, oh man, that too also had value. And that's so annoying to get there because it's right in the same way that like natural selection kind of seems right. Like it's So I don't know, when it comes to like the haters and everything, here's the one piece of advice that I did find was the most useful, right? Which is, number one, don't accept hate from people that you wouldn't take advice, right? And then also, don't take advice from someone whose life you don't admire.
Yep.
Right? So it comes in two flavors, right? Because there's a lot of people who are very good at what they do and they're a mess. Right?
Yeah.
And we get this authority bias, right? Because they're so good in one area, you have a tendency to apply that authority to areas that they have no authority, right? Like a billionaire giving you marriage advice, right? But we do that all the time, right? Yeah. So like it's okay to classify people for the thing that you know that they're good at. And when they speak to you about that thing, sit down, take the notes. But if they ever go outside of that and you don't personally admire them for that thing, it's okay to set that aside.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that you have to think less of the person speaking. It just means that they, like everyone else, including yourself, are speaking beyond your own authority, right? And so like when the trolls come out, that's the time that you should look at it, right?
Yep.
If it's somebody that's their thing, yeah, the approach may be wrong, but write it down, right? Why are they pissed? What is it that's got them so upset, right? And then also, if it's not their thing, well, yeah, then just, I don't know, delete it. It doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
At that point, it's just noise. And I remember early days when we were on there were so many people that were like, oh man, you should just give up magic and die, right? That was a pretty, like, 14-year-olds being the most horrible version of themselves, right? And I remember at one point, there was a kid going, hey, he reached out to me and he's like, hey, I've gotten a lot of hate from trying to do these like pass the jam things and everything. And these guys keep like coming after me in the comments and everything. And you couldn't block them because at the time, if you block them, they just create a new account and they do the same thing. And so it finally became this thing of like, you can't swashbuckle with them. You have to ignore them. This is not a game that you can play, right? Narcissism cannot be engaged with productively, right? You have to make it irrelevant. And
the
sharp
get bored.
Huh?
The sharp get bored.
Right. Yeah. There's no version of this where you're going to be like, you're going to say just the right phrase and they're going to be like, oh man, I really should rethink my life. It's just not going to, it's like, have you ever seen a troll go up against Jason Ledany?
Yeah.
Like, there's it's not going to like this is the thing that I say, you're never going to have the personality of Jason, but you should develop enough confidence to handle it like Jason. Like if someone is being ridiculous or picking on you for a thing that you love and they're not coming from a place that they're looking for the world to be better. They're just looking for you to be out of it, right? They're just, don't pay attention. Let it be. Don't engage it. Delete the comments. It matters not, right? You'll be just fine over the course of time. And if it hurts, and you don't like the pain, then step away from the platform.
Yeah.
You don't owe any of us anything, right? You don't owe us, like, just like you can't come onto a platform and say, you owe me fame because I've invested in this thing, right?
Yeah.
In the same way, right, you may say that this is too much or this isn't worth the cost, and I owe you none of this, right? I don't owe you engagement, attention, content, any of that, and it's okay, step away. And then go do the thing that you love, and likely is not what you create will matter far more and may actually get you more in the end later on. And that's kind of what happened to me, right? The things that like I was doing, I realized I didn't owe anyone a show. I didn't owe anyone at the party a card trick. And so I didn't. And then after year 8, when I finally had like a platform that made sense to me and was positive and created community, I poured everything into it and it all grew.
Yeah.
And that was worth it, right? I do think that this isn't the end. I don't think this is like where all this ends. Social media, I don't think is the be all end all. There will be something different because there always is, right?
Yeah.
Every generation has something different. And I hope that whatever comes next has that thing, has the thing that causes people to come together, to share, to build each other up instead of breaking each other down. It has the ability that you could invest in it and be proud of it, and that it will stay a while. It'll at least have some aspect of being evergreen, right?
Yep.
I don't know what that looks like. And for all I know, we may have to build it from scratch, but we'll see. I don't know.
Whatever it is, I'm looking forward to it because
Yeah.
social media is horrible.
It can be, right? And that's the thing is there was a time where it wasn't. And they're living off the legend of what they used to be.
Yeah.
There was a time when you could find your tribe. And now it's very anti-tribe. Or I feel like it serves two purposes at the moment. It is either trying to tell you the tribe you should be in, or it's trying to keep you from the tribe that is yours all along. Right? And the other aspect is that, like, if before we used to believe that social media, the premise was attention. Keep your attention and they can show you advertisements. But advertisements, the whole premise of an advertisement is to affect the behavior.
Yeah.
Right? So what if the premise now is behavior? If that's true, then community is subversive to collective behavior because it requires collective approval. Step 1, remove the concept of community. So everyone is deciding individually what to do next, right? You do not need a vote. You just need an action, right? That is much, much easier. And I do think that that's sort of why magic needs to shift to somewhere else, is because you are actively prevented from developing a community in so many ways now, unless the platform is specifically built for it, like Discord or something like that, or Circle, or even then, like, you must still bring people to you, right? Whereas before it was like you were showcased and everybody found each other. That's how we all got where we were at, was we all found each other, and then we all backed each other's plays, right? Whenever someone had a release, we all reposted about that release. And then all the people who were still in buying mode, who weren't in creating mode, or if they were in creating mode, they needed something to create with, they would see what we were all posting because we were all excited for the people that created it. And we all just kind of rose. We were all feeding each other's careers in this. I don't know that that's possible now. You know, I think it will have to be something different. I don't know what that is. And I am hopeful that it will be something worthwhile that I can see the people that come after me invest in. God, I want to see like some kid that I knew on Instagram 10 years ago just hand me my ass. I really just want to see somebody do like something that I really loved, but do it far better than anything I could have ever come up with. And then like you hand the crown off, you're like, oh God, like take it, run, right? And that's what, honestly, that is, if you're doing it right, that's the way it should be, right? But like, God help me if I'm like 80 and still trying to hang on to the crown, because that sounds sad. No.
Anyway. Legacy, man.
Word. Yeah. Honestly, your legacy is the future, right? Like Like you get to honor your past, but really you should be investing in the future, right? You didn't inherit the world from the generation before you. You have the world on loan from the future ahead of you, right? So, especially with magic, right? What you're doing right now is it's the prologue to somebody else's story in magic, right? That's why how you treat the next generation really matters, because they are what comes next, right? And the story they tell about you is effectively your story after you're gone, right? So like if they're like, man, what an asshole, right? Like, you don't want that. That sounds horrible, right? But if you go, yeah, like I met him and he was really kind and he gave me a deck and he showed me this one move that I was really curious about in so many ways, in a very selfish way, that's kind of the story I prefer. Yeah. Like I'd rather, if people remember me, I would rather they remember me kindly, if less famously, than to have me be remembered famously and forgetting the people that couldn't provide some value to me.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, there you go. That's the answer. That's the long form answer to your question about take nothing for granted.
Yeah. Perfect answer. Perfect. We're going to move on to one final segment, which is, as I'm holding in my hands here, the new question deck segment, which is 52 questions ranging from random magic questions to prolific life questions, which we seem to have covered a fair few of in this episode, which has been thoroughly enjoyable. Good. I mean, the cards have been thoroughly shuffled. I've been shuffling them all day, but
this entire time, all right.
A customary has to be done. If you just call out stop, we'll see what you land on, and that's going to be your question to answer. And I don't even know what you're going to get.
Is it the one on the top of the deck that's landing, or is it the one that's left in your hand?
That's up to you.
Okay, let's do the one that lands in the bottom hand. All right, ready? Stop.
This one here.
Yep, that one.
If you could erase one magic cliche forever, what would it be?
This guy sounds stupid. Right, I've got two. One is kind of a jokey answer, and the other one is actually pretty worthwhile to me. The first one is this.
Okay. Yep.
I can't think of a single time in fiction or in movies where that had anything good come after it. Right? Like
Thanos, notorious for
Thanos, right? But outside of that, right? This is it's used and it's not magical.
It's
like
nothing.
Honestly, the one that I like the most is from the Bell. It's this, right? Yeah. Where like if he wants a card to come to the top, it's not this. It's and then that, right? But yeah, honestly, it's just like it's like at the beginning of a tutorial when I was getting filmed by Peter McKinnon. My very first project with Illusionist was filmed by Peter McKinnon.
Who's now doing all right for himself.
Oh, what? This was because he was back in the right. This was before YouTube was a thing for like him or Ramsey and everything. And he goes, "Listen, I need to tell you, I've been doing this a really long time. I need you to not start off by saying, okay, let's go ahead and get right into it." Right?
Yeah.
He goes, "I just need you to not do that." And so in the trailer for my first release, the Instagram sessions on Instagram, he's interviewing me and it's me talking about the project. And then I look right at the camera. I was like, okay, so let's get right into it. And you watch the camera shake because he's giggling and just thinking, you asshole. Like this is like, but just, anti-authority. You can't tell me what to do. I'll just do that thing, right? Yeah. So yeah, those are the two. That and okay, let's just get right into it, right? Let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. But then the other thing that I think probably should be erased is displaying bad magic.
Yeah.
Right? That if you're not good at it, this idea that you shouldn't showcase it. Right? Yeah. Number one, I do think that you should. And I do think you should take the feedback, even if it's hard. But also, I think that should be allowed because that's everything that we were doing early days is horrible by comparison.
Yeah.
Right? That's a 4K camera, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole lighting set. This is a library. This is effectively a set, right? And I can do as many takes as I want in 4K. And I've got editing suites and I've got titles and I can do transitions and everything. And I look at the videos that I very first posted and they're horrible. They're really bad by comparison, right? And if I weren't able to do that, if I had to wait until I had all this, I never would have started.
Yeah.
Right? In so many ways in magic, it's very much the same way. I think people should be granted the grace to present magic based on where they're at. And that should be celebrated, not tolerated.
Yeah.
Right? That should be something that we celebrate people for having the courage to do it, not going, oh God, that was horrible. Like, don't do that until you've practiced more. Like, don't be a dick about it. Right?
Yep. You were in that same stage at some point.
Yeah. You too sucked and we're a human, right? Like this is the Mr. Rogers, like the meaner version of Mr. Rogers, right?
Yeah.
Like I do think that like that girl who's like been trying to palm but has small hands should still be allowed to palm terribly.
Yeah.
And that should be okay and should be celebrated, right? Because we don't do that anywhere else. Right? We stand and applaud kindergartners who sing at like the community performance.
Yeah.
Right? But we shoot down the kid who's like doing a bad palm on Instagram. Don't do that.
Yeah. Like
you don't have permission to take out all of your frustrations and everything, and you don't have permission to be a gatekeeping, jerk just because magic is based on secrets.
Yeah.
Right? That's the tough part, is that because magic is based on secrets, so many people take that as license to be abrasive to anyone that is exploring it.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to die. Especially because the world has moved on from this idea that magic secrets will be kept in like this locked box in a special castle. Like that's gone, right? And so I think part of the legacy that is desperately trying to hold on to that is that thing of like being a troll to people who are just starting out. I can't wait for that to die. And I hope it dies painfully. I hope it's one of those things that like it as an idea dies a horrible death. And that what comes out of it is that people remember that, yeah, we're human and we're all still figuring it out. And that mastery begins by looking like an idiot and having the courage to present it and take the feedback, right? And if the feedback is presented in kind, they stay. And then the world fills with masters. And then our only issue is that there won't be enough world to appreciate all the mastery. Go the other way, and the only thing that you're doing is just breaking it down until the only thing that's left is strong but rigid. It's strong, but it is inflexible.
Yep.
And then when it too breaks or ages out or its hands fail, then the world is less, not more.
Yeah. How, off the back of that, do you go about supporting those who ask for advice but don't want to hear it? Which I find is a very common thing.
I think it is. There's two. I have two thoughts on that. The first one is then they're not asking for advice; they're asking for interaction.
Yep.
They're asking for attention, right? Which tells me that there's probably something else going on there.
Yep.
Right. And then secondarily, not your end of the bargain.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair.
If it is yours to give and you are willing to give it, you don't know what a person will take and invest in, right? Even the people who say that they will, right? They may falter. They may find something more important, right? You may invest a great deal of knowledge about card magic into them, and then they decide they want to do coins. And you will say, wow, God, all that advice was useless, but it wasn't, right? It took them maybe seeing all the work that you put in to go, it's not worth it for me.
Yeah.
But I could do coins, right? You talk to Danny Goldsmith. This is the most annoying thing, right? Danny is one of the best coin people I have ever met. Also one of the best card men I've ever met.
It's frustrating.
I hate that. I can't stand that. Like, oh God, like pick one, right? But the the experience that he had and everything, like coins are for him a language. It's a second language, right? But it's definitely like a language, and it is a first love, right? Coins he can do because mastery is a transferable skill, right? But I'm sure at some point someone was giving him advice about cards, and at some point he's going, man, I think I'd rather just invest in coins. And he did, and it's beautiful, right? But this is the thing, like the long tail of any action that you take is unpredictable, and it is better to invest what you can into people, mainly because you just don't know, right? Kevin started that magic club and it changed my life.
Yep.
But at the moment, I'm just some punk sixth grader showing up with a puzzle, not a magic trick, and he let me in on a lark. Like, there is no telling, right? One of the guys is Taylor Hughes. One of the guys that was in the magic club that we were in is the guy, Taylor Hughes. Taylor Hughes is like a
Phenomenal
national speaker and an author and everything. Yeah. Like, you know, when I got into the castle, right? It was pretty hard to get in, but I got into it at the same time as like Jason Latimer, who went on to win the Grand Prix for FISM, right? Like, I was adjacent to a bunch of people and we all received the same investment, right? We all received the same training. All the same people came to lecture. It hits one and I go, yeah, I think I'd rather stick to cards. It hits him and he goes, I think I'd rather go win the Magic Olympics, right? So if it comes to like, you have no idea whether it will take or not, that's not your end of this bargain. That's theirs.
Yeah.
Right? If you present it and you have it in you to present it, and you're okay with the fact that you have no idea who will take it and run and who will take it and chuck it, right? Or where steal it. If you're okay with that, then I say invest it. Because that is the only way that magic grows. It's the only way that it survives. This idea of internal secrecy is the quickest way to speed up entropy. Because our hand will go. And even though there is digital permanence, there is also digital overlap, which means anything that you write will largely be overlapped by all of the information that comes out the very next day, right? But people move slower. And when you invest in people, there is a long tail to that. And you do have an effect, right? We are who we are to a large extent because of the unseen sacrifices of those who loved us most. So invest.
There we go. Beautiful full circle back to the beginning moment.
Yeah, right. It's like he planned it. It's like
perfectly rounded. We've got two super quick questions. This one is, what are your plans for the future, whether that be magic related or just stuff that you're looking forward to and working on?
Plans for the future. I really want to explore the history a bit more. Not that I want to be a historian, but I want to show a way to appreciate the stories and the interweavings that I care about most, right? So like I have the idea of telling the story of Georges Méliès, the father of film, right? The guy who created that like whole moon thing. With the incredible magician, right?
Yeah.
And he moves into film, and it is like having Albert Einstein born 400 years earlier, right? It is like having basically the man who would be the godfather of an entire art form show up day one and already be prepared to be that for that art form, right? But what most people don't realize is that the concept of a jump cut is because his camera broke and he had to fix it, and they started filming it, and then we reviewed the film, carriages disappeared, men turned into women suddenly, and this is the birth of magic in film. But that's the same thing as a card change.
Yeah.
Right? A card change is a jump cut in real life. So if you wanted to learn the concept of a card change, how much fun would it be if you also learned the history of film? And you found out that structurally speaking, they're the same thing, right? And then you learn the distinction between the two, right? If you change it overtly, you get a jump cut, right? If you change it covertly, you get a transition.
Yeah.
But in the mind of a person, you could use the same thing that they do in film in real life. It's just you're reframing the problem, right? And you're using a slightly different medium, but it's the same thing, right? The idea that like chess, right? I love chess, but there is the world champion, Emmanuel Lasker. He was the world champion of chess for over a quarter of a century. It took the world a quarter of a century to find someone better than him, right? And he introduced the world to a structural form of competition that was largely mathematically based. He's actually one of the godfathers of game theory.
Yeah.
And he introduced the world to the idea of zugzwang, right? The idea that you could put your opponent in a position where no matter what they did, it always got worse for them, right? That's the Jonah card principle. They're the same thing, which means you could learn about both of them at the same time. And now you know a little magic and you learned a little bit about chess, right?
That's very cool. I love seeing things reframed in different manners because it helps you both appreciate what it is and it helps you understand, because you might not read something with the same language, but you can still appreciate and understand it for what it is through other means.
Right. It's like how Maya Angelou discovered Shakespeare and thought that Shakespeare must be written by a 9-year-old black girl in the South because she read a sonnet and she's like, this is me, right?
Yeah.
I see this. Magic in so many ways is so many other things, but there's a myopathy that develops when all you're staring at is magic. When it becomes the lens, all you see are the magic colored things, right?
Yeah.
But if it is a canvas and you find out how many things can speak to that canvas and how many things are related if you just take a step back and you don't look at it through a magic lens, but just a human lens, right? That zugzwang in chess is effectively the same principle as the Jonah card principle, right? Applied differently. That film and card magic may have something to say to each other, right? And if you see those connections going out, then my hope is that if I can do that often enough, people will start to see the connections going back in.
Yeah.
Right? That a physicist will become a card magician and he'll affect card magic in a way that no one else could because it took a physicist to it.
Yeah.
Right? Or that, an interpretive dancer might become a stage magician and create the most beautiful piece of art anyone has ever seen in magic because it took a dancer to do it. Right? But the way I'm looking at it, the only way that's going to happen is if I keep showing people how magic and the world outside of it are actually connected. And even if they don't affect each other directly, they're adjacent, right? They may not be carbon copies of each other, but they rhyme.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing where you take that.
Thank you.
Very much looking forward to that. Well, where can our listeners find you? Where can we keep up to date with sort of what you're doing and these fun things that you're working on?
If I do it at all, it'll probably be on YouTube.
Yep.
So if you just look up Chronicle on YouTube, Chronicle is spelled weird. CHRONYQL, because it was the only one that wasn't taken or had 18 numbers after it. But also that's why I chose the name Chronicle, was because so much of what we do is a story.
Yeah.
So much of what we do is the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we can remember. And what we do in the future is based on the stories that we find believable now. So I chose Chronicle because I figured you can tell a strong enough story, it's believable, you might actually affect what happens next.
There we go. I'll have the Chronicle YouTube channel linked in the show notes and your Instagram as well for anybody that's looking to go back and see more of the wonderful stuff that we analysed in the annotated section. It has been an absolutely phenomenal few hours talking to you here. I know I've certainly taken a lot from it. There's a lot of things both in magic and in life that I have now got more things to think about and take a different outlook on. So I thank you for opening those doors as well, and hopefully they've been opened for other people as well and they can take so much away from this. And conversations like this are the reason that this whole podcast exists, just to bring incredible people forward and give you the appreciation that you've given to everybody else. So thank you
very much for
what you do.
It's been really cool getting to hang with you, and thank you for choosing me to be on your podcast, because it's fun, man. Just keep doing the good work, because it is very much, it's having a positive effect. So
I
if you need a
appreciate that
reminder,
massively.
just call me back and I'll remind you of that. So, no.
Perfect.
Anyway,
You'll be
thank you
getting
again.
many a phone call.
Lots of them. Okay, very good. Right. You don't know what you signed up for. 2 in the morning, right?
Yeah, hello.
Anyway.
If you have enjoyed it, if you have been listening along, hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you haven't, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Please do leave a 5-star review. Tell your friends. Get everybody else to come listen to this. We have a multitude of other incredible episodes already recorded and so much more to come that I am incredibly looking forward to. So for myself and Jeremy, thank you so much, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Thank you.